All right. All right. Looks like we are live right now. YouTube just started going live immediately. Normally it gives me a box that lets me pull the trigger, but now right when I press the button, it just goes. I'm cool with it though. I am cool with it. Same deal as always. If you're watching this not live, you probably want to jump forward 12 minutes. I'll put the link in the description. Most likely. I will most likely do that. It's been a busy time. Because I'm 12 minutes early. So we'll start in about 12 minutes. It's just me. No one's here yet. How's it going, Owen? Pretty good. Pretty good day. Long day. Woke up at like 5:30 a.m. Now I'm here. Can't complain. Not only can I not complain, I'm enjoying it. Ooh, there's 2 people here. What's up? I'm pasting the link onto Twitter, but I already wrote the tweet, so it's going to go faster than normal. Alright, link posted. Link posted. Computer, whirring, glove, on, but serial killer status because we don't have the blue gloves, but I will have them next week. That's all you can really ask for. Oh shit, I just opened Photoshop by accident. I'm gonna close that up. No one in the chat yet. Who's gonna be the first chatting person in the chat? Maybe it'll be me. Maybe I will break the seal. No, it was Tyler Prime. Yes, it is Tuesday. It's true. I am the Tuesday reminder. All right, cool. Okay, so I'm sitting on my window here. Otherwise, we should be good. I'm going to put on my other glove. I'm going to organize my paints, I guess, while we get this going. But, yeah, it's been a pretty cool day. It's been a pretty cool day. I woke up at like 5:30 to go do some medical shit. And now I'm wearing these medical gloves. It's all a big circle of life. A big circle of life. All right, cool. I ripped this glove, but I only have like 1 or 2 gloves left, so I'm going to roll with it. Yes, it is the best time of the week because we all get to hang out. It's true. How you guys doing? It's funny, like on every platform I have, like on Twitter or here or even on Patreon, like I'll post like, how are you guys doing? Like let me know what's going on. You know, what's going on with you guys? And people will like the post, but no one ever actually tells me. No one ever actually responds. Like, it's just funny. So I'm actually like curious how it's going with you guys. If you want to share in the chat, you don't have to. If you're a private kind of person, I respect that. But okay, let's see. I got the chat open. I got OBS open, and we're good. I'm gonna organize some paints. But yeah, it's going good on my end. Yeah, I was in this like medical spot this morning. Not doing anything too crazy, but it's always an interesting little environment, interesting little situation, poking into the medical world. I made a tweet. I deleted it though because I'm gonna like rewrite it and stuff. I'm just gonna organize my paints really quick. But I was noticing like how awful all the art is in like every hospital. Sometimes I go to, it doesn't really matter why or where I go anywhere, but the art is always like so grim and weird. I think there's probably only been like a handful of times ever that I've seen like nice art in like a medical place. And I'm not like picky. I'm not looking for like, like an original Gustav Klimt painting. Oh, word? I got a super chat. That's dope. Thank you, Spiced. I will humbly accept your super chat. And that means I will pause my rambling to answer your question. Also, yeah, Ian, they stay up on my YouTube channel. I don't take them down or anything. The super chat question for the pre-show. I should delete the pre-show so it's like exclusive, but I'm not that fancy with video editing. For the pre-show, what do you do when you're sad and conflicted? Oh, that's a really good question, man. It's a really good question. It's a really deep question. What do I do, man? It's a good question. Well, it's interesting. I don't know. I was talking about this the other day. I'm filming a little. People always ask me this. I will answer your question, obviously. People always ask me, like, how I ended up like becoming Christian and stuff from being like a cult boy and like psychedelics guy. and I figured instead of like smashing out, a 500 character response every time someone DMs me that, I would just record a video and talk about it. So that's what I was doing, and I got to a point in the video where I was kind of talking about that a little bit because I feel like I have kind of an interesting relationship to like the depressive and like melancholy emotions. Because I think we have talked about it on here before. I try not to repeat myself, but it's relevant because I feel like for a long time, like I never really got like depressed or sad, and then when I started like engaging with life like more seriously, I did. Or like other serious things come up, like you go through like long periods of your life where basically you're just kind of floating and like nothing serious like ever happens. But then clear gloves are back. It sucks. But then now at this point in my life, I feel like it's something I have a lot more of like a stable relationship to, I guess you could say. Like I do, since you asked, we can talk about it for the pre-show. It is relevant. I guess I do get depressed sometimes. It kind of depends like about what, I guess, like sometimes I get really down about like medical stuff, I guess. I was just talking about that. I suppose everyone has a situation like that eventually or something. Or other things, like lately, like I've been having these dreams where there'll just be like a lot of people from my past, like in my dream, and then I'll wake up and I'll be like, wow, like that's weird, and I'll kind of be thinking about like people from the past and like how I don't really see them anymore and like stuff like that, and that'll like make me kind of depressed, I guess. So it kind of depends about what, but I mean, in general, if you were going to ask me what I do when I get like sad or conflicted or stuff, I guess it's kind of like two parts. I mean, like on the one hand, I try and like kind of turn the camera back a little bit and I think about like what I've been intaking, and how that's affecting the situation. Like a lot of times I'll get like kind of depressed and like in a certain way, and then I'll think like, well, what have I been like watching while I've been working, and what have I been reading, or what have I not been reading? Like what have I been like putting in my brain basically, and like for example, like sometimes if I'm working, if I kind of want to just like be kind of like brain dead, I'll put on like random YouTube videos or people analyzing like video games or shows and things like that. But then I notice it like makes me depressed later. Like if you watch like a lot of TV all day, you kind of get that weird like stale feeling. But I feel like as you kind of progress mentally, like that can kind of manifest in different ways. So short answer is like on the one hand, I kind of turn the camera backwards and like think about what I've been intaking or what I've been doing or what I've been not doing that could affect it, Like sometimes I feel like when I get kind of depressed, it's like when I've like drifted really far away from like certain like spiritual things, like just praying or, clearing out my brain or not doing like rosary stuff. That's one of my like personal like spiritual practices, I guess. But on the other hand, I don't know, man. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I guess I just kind of like power through it in a way and like think about what I can like learn from it. I mean, I like this analogy. I kind of got like half of it from this book I read, but like I feel like the spiritual path I was on before was kind of like the way of like the shellfish, this guy called it, where like you try and kind of like clam yourself up and just like build this like shell around yourself and like not feel anything, but then he called like the Christian path like the way of like tears, and how you do end up like suffering and like thinking about suffering in a different way. And I mean, I guess I kind of just like power through it. That's kind of like a really lame answer, but I feel like sometimes there's nothing you can do, right? I mean, sometimes I get depressed about stuff that I have like literally no control over, and like, what are you going to do about it? Try and like look for like things that make me happy, I guess, to like get some distance from it in a way. Like today, for example, I guess it's a good example. So this is a really good pre-show question. Thank you for asking me this. So yeah, like today, for example, like I went to go do this medical stuff, and like it's not like I wasn't getting like surgery or something, but like I got this ultrasound and I got like blood drawn. Like it wasn't like anything crazy, but it's like depressing in like a macro sense, because you're like, oh fuck, I'm like in the hospital. I'm not trying to make it sound, I'm not like in the hospital, like I'm fine, like I'm at my house, like everything's totally cool. But you know what I'm saying? Like I was there like doing this thing I have to do every like few months, let's say. And then I got out and I was like, man, I'm like really depressed. Like that sucks. Just because I hate doing that. And I was like, wow, that really sucks. So I got some shrimp from the supermarket and I fed it to my dog in the parking lot because my dog really likes shrimp. And I feel like there's just something about like the very basic, like wholesome, like pleasures of life in a way that kind of put like a different spin on it, I guess, like, I don't know. I guess that's kind of my answer, honestly. Like, I'm kind of depressed about like my mortality or something, and then I'm like in this parking lot on the side of the highway, like feeding cold shrimp to my dog in a parking lot. It's like things could always be worse, I guess. And I guess I kind of use that to like get some distance from it and think about things in like a different way. I really like the like wounded healer archetype, which is something that I guess I got from Carl Jung. I think he kind of developed that archetype. But there's this archetype called the wounded healer, where basically in like different, I guess you can call them like indigenous cultures or whatever, but in different like cultures and stuff, like someone who has like a brush with death will then be the one who becomes like a shaman, and then who becomes like the intermediary between like this world and like the world of the dead. And I think there's basically like a non-physical death relationship to that, where it's like, when you engage with like any like darker part of life, or whatever it is, everyone has their own like, whether it's for like theological reasons or just like mundane reasons. I really do feel like people are saddled with these like different crosses, very appropriate for the painting show imagery wise, but maybe it's like a mental health issue, or like some weird physical ailment, or you're like addicted to some drug, or like you came from like a really weird fucked up family, or like a mix of them or whatever. But I feel like as you like take on those problems, the like lighter side of it is that you get to help other people that also have those problems. And it's kind of like, even though you feel like an isolated like little node, you like tackling these problems like makes it easier in a way for someone else to tackle them later. And you kind of get this like ability. That's kind of why I like the wounded healer archetype and how it like dovetails with shamanism, because like let's say it's some problem, like I don't know, I'll make up something that I like personally don't have, like, well, everyone kind of has a weird fucked up family. Like let's say you come from some weird like crazy situation, then later when you meet someone else who's going through that, you can be like, yeah, well, I went through that also, and like now I'm like further down the road than you are, and at least I could like give you some tips or something. So I don't know, I guess that's kind of my like rambly answer. I don't really have like an answer necessarily, but I kind of think of it that way and like do those things. But mostly I see in the chat you said like I've been taking in some bad things and I think it's contributing. Yeah, that's like the one thing that's like really in your control, you know what I mean? Like we're all cast into like the infinite fallen world landscape, but pretty much like the one thing you can always 100% control is like what you're putting in your brain, you know what I mean? And like, yeah, like sometimes, like the other day, my wife was gone and I was trying to like watch new stuff while I was working, and I fell down this YouTube rabbit hole of like creepy internet stuff, and then all of a sudden, like YouTube videos about like creepy internet stuff, and all of a sudden they were like kind of like disturbing and weird, and I was like, yo, why am I like putting this in my brain right now? Like I'm having like a great day, like working, and the sun is shining, and I'm watching some like weird disturbing video. Like what am I doing? So that's kind of my answer, I guess. That's my answer. Was it a good answer? No one knows, but that was my answer. And now it's 7 o'clock. Nice. Got us right up to the show line, and I might just pull the trigger right now. I'll wait like 1 more minute to get more people in. Said strange, I've never heard of a dog liking seafood. Yeah, I like feeding my dog weird food. It's funny, like on the note that we were just talking about, like I think I am like emotionally like stunted in some ways, and the way that I show affection to people is like via food some ways. So I think like with my dog that really manifests. So I'll be like, oh, shrimp, like, I fed my dog octopus when I was back home. I fed my dog squid. I fed my dog shrimp. A bunch of fish. I probably spoil her to some extent, but I'm trying to like trying to train her like really hard too. So I guess what you get in, you put out. What you put in, you get out of it, I guess. And yeah, she like chimps out for shrimp. She goes nuts. It's really satisfying, actually. Are you secretly on Jay Dyer's Discord server? I should say yes, so you guys start like trying to figure it out and like figure out who I am. But I don't want to lie because that's unethical. So no, I am not. I've never been on Discord. I feel like someone made a tweet where it's like, when I think of TeamSpeak and I go on TeamSpeak, I'm like hanging out with my friends. When I go on Discord, I feel like the FBI is like going to show up on my house and I'm taking my own life into my hands. And that's like kind of how I feel about Discord. I've literally never used it. I have no idea what it is or what it looks like. But since I always hear about people like getting doxxed from it and like, weird stuff happening on there, I just have that perception of it. But I'm sure it's cool. I'm sure it's a cool place to hang out. But no, I have not done that. And guess what? Right now, it is that time once again. It is 7:02. We're late. I'm going to pull the trigger. Oh my God, there's 2 buttons. It says new intro and actual intro. I haven't pressed the wrong button in so long. Am I going to break my streak? Oh, let's find out. All right, what's up, everybody? How's it going? How's it going on your end? It's funny, I said before when I ask how it's going, no one ever tells me, and then no one in the chat told me how it was going, so I'm going to assume it's going great for everyone. Mustard Pink said I'm making banana bread. That's dope. Epic making banana bread. I am hosting a little painting show. So yeah, I think we'll just jump right in. I was just talking about my day and everything, a little warm up, and we're ready to pull the trigger and get it started right now. I kind of want to just jump into the imagery stuff, but I'm wondering if there's anything I should hit beforehand. I don't think there is. We've been doing the looking at. You can hear me moving my chair around. It's because I realized my Bible was on the other side of the room while I was doing the intro, and I ran over there to get it, and now I'm reconfiguring my chair. Anyway, so we've been doing the looking at random interesting books as like a little warm-up before the show, and I think it's been going really well, and I actually have a crazy supply, a maddeningly large supply of interesting, weird, crazy books, because when I went to where I'm from and came back, my car was full of books, so we have no shortage of weird, crazy books to look at before the show. I'll bust it out one at a time, and here I got a nice, very relevant, extremely relevant to the painting show. So we're going to start with this little, very aesthetically framed. Oh, and the white, this is perfect. Look at this, perfect. Little book for the show right now. This is called The Pastelist's Year: Painting the Four Seasons in Pastel. And this is a really good example of, I talk about painting because that's my particular medium, but whatever you're into, writing, music, baking, banana bread, whatever it is, I feel like it's really not important. I guess it is important to look at sort of areas that you maybe think that you wouldn't get anything from and see kind of what you can get from them. And this is a really good example. So, for me, for my end, it's pretty obvious things that I would draw inspiration from, like a book about Dark Ages painting, or, not that it would be called Dark Ages because that's a misnomer, or, Buddhist art back in the day, or, Russian icon painting, or anything like that. But this is not as obvious. So this is called Painting the Four Seasons in Pastel. In case you guys don't know, pastel is kind of like a fine art crayon. They're like these big kind of like cylinders of just pigment with binder. So you just, draw with them basically, and you get these kind of like chunky drawing styles, and it's very like impressionist. A lot of the impressionists like pastels, and it's kind of like right in the middle of painting and drawing. So you can imagine, this is actually pretty good. So you're making scenes like this, but you're drawing with these fat, like thick chalk things, So it's kind of right in between drawing and painting. And my friend got me this book, and I was like, that's cool, man, but I actually don't use pastels. I actually don't really like using them because I don't like to be in that space right between painting and drawing. I kind of like to know if I'm using lines or colors to make my image, and when I'm doing something like this, it's just a little like confusing for my brain, basically. So I was like, I'm not really sure what I'm going to get out of this, but I actually got a lot out of it because it's all about color and how color relates to the seasons. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. It's the first September show. We're going into fall. And we honestly don't even need to open the book just because this cover is out of control. The woman who made this book is really, really, really good at marrying color schemes with a particular part of the year. And I want to talk about that a little bit tonight while we're working, I guess. But I like thinking about that because when I studied Japanese art, that was one of the things that I really took away from it. Japanese art is kind of, not always, but often rooted in the seasons and how they're changing. And when I have no ideas or no inspiration at all, I'll often just tap into where we're at in terms of the seasons. And I think normally people think of like, there's like spring, summer, fall, winter, right? But it's a little bit different if you kind of break it down into the months, because then you get like spring just starting out of winter, you get spring full blast, spring becoming summer, summer just starting, summer full blast, summer going into fall. And you kind of break it down like a little bit more, and even not just color wise, those themes have like actual like informational content that's really interesting. Like, when fall is just starting, you have like that little hint of like things starting to die, but it's still summer and things are still really beautiful. It's kind of where we're at right now. It's really interesting to unpack. Or when it's totally dead winter and you have just a tiny bit of spring coming through, it's like everything's dead and you get the first little hint of like new life coming. It's also really interesting, obviously, a lot to unpack there. So whatever you do, it's relevant in some way. And you can see on this cover right over here, so this is actually going through each month. And I just wanted to poke into it really quick because I think it's so well done. Each color scheme really perfectly fits the month that it is. So we have January, perfect. It's like a little bit, like it's definitely dead of winter, but it's not December. This is December, so you're like in dead ice world. But January is a little bit different. So January, February, so you got a little bit of spring coming through, but it's definitely still winter. The yellow sky is like really on point. March, perfect. So spring is coming through. You still got winter going on now. March. April, oh, perfect. April. May, perfect. June, height of summer status, love it. Also July. And like there's this subtle difference between June and July that I think is like really well done if you actually look at it. Like this is May, June, July. It's so good. August, this is probably my favorite one. I posted the other day on Twitter like what I was thinking of as like late August color scheme. I think this is really good. The little purple in here is like perfect for August in my opinion. So I guess right now we're right in between these two. This is September, so we're like right on the cusp between these two. I think the September one is really good because for fall, people normally think of just like, you know, red, orange, yellow, brown, but it's like a little bit more subtle than that. So September, October, oh, it's great. I mean, I'm going to say this for everyone, but everyone is perfect. September, October, you have that like crispness of winter like starting to come through, but it's definitely still fall. November, it's perfect, honestly. And then December. This might be actually, I said each one was my favorite one, but I really like this one also because that really is like December. You know, it's so dark and wintry, and it is different than November or January, which are similar but different from each other. So anyway, we don't even have to open the book, like I said. I thought that was pretty cool just because actually out of all of my like artistic studies, I don't know if I've ever seen it broken down this well as this color image. So whoever laid this out had a really good idea and did a really good job on it. So maybe we'll poke into this one like the seasons change a little bit more. Anyway, I want to get to painting right now. And you know the deal. We are back. We are back in the Bible situation. It feels like it's been so long. I don't think it really has been that long. I think it's just been like 2 weeks. But it feels like it's been a really long time. And when I was planning the show out, I was thinking, what are we going to do right now? What are we going to poke into? We were hitting... pretty much all of season 2, actually, the whole time, has been visions and dreams from the Bible. And that was really dope. That was really awesome. We hit a lot of really cool stuff. But I don't like to feel too chained up. I started to feel like, you know, we're going 100 miles an hour, and then it starts to be like we're going 90, 80, we're going 60. And I didn't want to feel like I was just like the monkey doing the dancing thing with the Italian guy and the organ grinder, doing the same thing over and over. So I thought we would change it up a little bit. And I was thinking, well, now, you know, if we're changing it up, we can go anywhere. We can do anything. And I was thinking about maybe just hitting like particular symbolic like motifs. Like I was looking at Isaac and like the lion and the lamb and the wolves and the wolf laying down with like, you know, the sheep and all this stuff. And I was like, that would be pretty cool, but I kind of feel like I just wanted something a little bit meatier. Not that that's not meaty, but, you know, we've been talking about symbols and stuff like that for a while. And then I was flipping through and I hit the Psalms and I was like, dude, this is perfect because a lot of these are, I mean, they're poems and they are poems. And a lot of them are almost like images woven together, which is actually very fitting for what we do here, like with the images and experimenting with like symbolic motifs and like arranging them and stuff like that. So I thought it would be perfect. So I thought we would just hit one, honestly. I don't know if we'll keep doing them or, you know, if we'll change it up, but I thought it would be really good. I was thinking we would hit my favorite one. I don't know if it's bad to have a favorite one, but I do. But I think that we are not going to do that. My favorite one is I tripped myself out a little bit because it says Psalm 19:20. And then this one says Psalm 18:19. So I was like, it must be a different numbering system. But I was just thinking like, oh no, have I been saying Psalm 19 my whole life and I meant Psalm 18? But I'm not going to get too worried about that. My favorite one is this one, which I know is 19, but it's labeled here 18 parentheses 19. I don't know why. I didn't look into it, honestly. The beginning is, the heavens declare the glory of God, the firmament shows the creation of his hands. I know it is the heavens declare the glory of God, the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. And I really like this one because I feel like it has this kind of like esoteric like flavor, if I can say that. It's kind of like very enigmatic, like what does it mean? So you can check that one out if you want. I'm not going to read the whole thing right now. But then I just went to the first one, and I was like, maybe we'll start at the beginning. And I thought this one was really good for the painting, I was thinking fall. It's about kind of trees in a way, so we can probably like get some color scheming situation going on. And it's just a really cool image. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to read this. I'm going to maybe do like a little quick map of like the symbols in it, and then we'll just jump right into the painting. Obviously, it's really short because it's a psalm. And before we do that, just really quick, let's all refresh our memory. Some of us don't know. Some of us do know. Some of us feel like we should know, but we really don't. So really quick, Book of the Psalms, what is it? This is, by the way, this Orthodox Study Bible I got. It's pretty tight. I'm pretty sure it's just the KJV annotated with these Orthodox study notes, but I really like it. I think it's really cool. So yeah, really quick. Who wrote it? Among the authors of the Psalms are David, the temple musicians, and Moses. Cool. Date, generally from 1000 BC, the time of David, to several centuries after. Cool. Major themes, the song of God's people. Each psalm has its own theme as noted in the titles. Perfect. Background. Maybe we'll read all this, maybe we won't. But it touches on themes like the prophecies of the coming Messiah, prayers for the king, personal lamentations, songs of praise, hymns for special feasts. It's like a prayer book for the church. It became this prayer book for the modern church as it was for ancient Israel. Hits all these themes about Christ and the church and things like that. Uses in the church. It's used in daily cycle of prayers, in the weekly order of morning and evening services. In the observance of the church year, the liturgical tradition selects particular psalms or verses for special feasts or, fittingly, seasons, which we were just talking about. And there's one more, purpose. The Psalms serve many functions. They foretell coming events, recall history, frame laws for life, reveal what must be done to obey God's word, are a treasury of good doctrine, and help overcome the passions that exercise dominion over our souls. Well, we were just talking about that in the pre-show. That's perfect. Through the power of poetic expression to capture and gradually transform our thoughts. Wow, this is literally like a manifesto for what we're doing here in general. How is that phrased? Help overcome the passions that exercise dominion over our souls through the power of poetic expression to capture and gradually transform our thoughts. Wow, that's perfect. Let's just like tattoo that on the front of the show. Perfect. Okay, so the first one, let's read it really quick. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the troublesome. But his will is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by streams of waters, that produce its fruit in its season, and his leaf shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. Not so are the ungodly, not so. But they are like the dust the wind drives from the face of the earth. Therefore the ungodly shall not rise in the judgment, nor sinners in the counsel of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. So I thought that was kind of a perfect jumping off point. It's not too esoteric in terms of its surface level. I'm sure we could go infinitely deep, but it has a straight up surface meaning, and then maybe we'll go a little bit deeper into it. But I wanted to grab a little piece of paper, and I kind of did this little map I posted on Twitter where I have some ideas and things poking into each other. But I really like doing that because it kind of just lays things out in a nice visual way. It's kind of like a bridge between words and visual thinking that I like to do. So really quick, what I want to do with this is just kind of want to take out the symbols and themes of it and kind of map out what it means, at least right off the bat, and then we'll jump right into making a picture based on that. And I kind of think I already know where we're going to go with it, but we'll kind of see. So basically right off the bat, what I took away from it is we got the righteous man, and that is contrasted with the unrighteous man. Perfect. And when I was reading St. Augustine's commentary, just so we're kind of thinking about it while we're going through it, he was likening the righteous man to Christ, obviously, who I suppose in a sense is the most righteous man, not being exclusively a man, but we're not going to go into a crazy detour about that right now. So first thing was walking a path, who walks not in the way of unrighteousness. So walking a path, that's kind of like life, obviously. Metaphor for life, walking a path, that's pretty common. Nor stands in the way of sinners. So the path could be either good or bad. There's good paths and bad paths. That kind of makes sense too, actually. Just like real life. Nor sits in the seat of the troublesome. So I thought that was interesting. So we have this kind of seat, which is kind of like a throne. A seat's kind of like a throne, especially when it's given a special title and stuff. And it's actually interesting because Augustine said that the throne, the seat, what is it called? The seat of pestilence or something? We'll get to it in a second. But he said the seat represented like worldly authority. So I'm going to just put that in right now. Worldly authority. It's like something everyone wants, everyone quests after, but righteous men don't really want that necessarily. Sits in the seat of the troublesome, but his will is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. So then we have this kind of like God dominion, which is like the good place that you want to be. I'm going to make like a little separate column over here. Maybe this will be too visually confusing, but I think it'll be okay. He shall be like a tree. So I think that's probably going to be like the main visual metaphor that we use is a tree. And I really like the tree because it hits so many different things like life. A tree is also kind of like an axis mundi in a way. It's very stable. Maybe I didn't lay this chart out in the best way, but it's okay. Stable. It's kind of like a God property, being stable. So it's good that it goes in this column. And also, if we're going to try and get a little esoteric with it, which I will, for the tree, we have the trees of the garden of good, tree of good and evil, tree of the knowledge of good and evil, all the trees in the Garden of Eden. But tree also makes wood, and then the cross is made of wood. So I kind of always feel like there's some kind of like esoteric connection there between like trees were kind of cast out of the garden via a tree, and then Christ is crucified via wood, which comes from a tree. I can't say that I can like fully unpack that. And then also, and basically a ton of different world systems cosmologically, that aren't Christian, pre-Christian, let's say. Tree is kind of like the axis mundi, kind of like a world-orienting principle. And then actually, the cross itself is kind of like an axis mundi in Christianity. So there kind of is that interesting interplay between all those different concepts that maybe we'll hit and talk about a little bit. Planted by the streams of waters. So water is also paired up with God a lot. So the water gives life to the tree. Water, baptism, God. I'm winging this chart, but I think it's coming out pretty well. His leaf shall not wither. Whatever he does shall prosper. So tree is like life also. Tree of life. Perfect. It all kind of goes together. Not so are the ungodly. So on this side, we have those that are like the dust of the wind. The dust the wind drives from the face of the earth. So actually, it's kind of interesting going with the tree thing, because I would say dust driven around by wind has one main property, which is rootlessness. And then obviously root is kind of like a tree, right? So it's kind of all coming together. Therefore the ungodly shall not rise in the judgment, nor sinners in the counsel of the righteous. So we have this kind of like area of God, and then these people are not over there. They're kind of in their own area. It's not where you want to be. Not a good place to be. So we got the dichotomy of places, kind of like the two paths. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. So we got kind of like life spectrum over here. Then we could say it's running along a spectrum. Death, not just physical death though, it's like death of the spirit. It's kind of like eternal life and eternal death. And then we got the righteous and the unrighteous sort of walking these two paths that diverge. Metaphor of the tree. It's kind of almost like a picture already. And that's what we're going to do right now. And I didn't put this in, but I really liked the inclusion of him being like a leaf. For some reason, the whole tree thing, I feel like just fits perfectly with the leaf thing. And I feel like a leaf is like a really interesting symbol for me because it's part of the tree, but it also is like the way the tree like lives. Like the tree lives via the leaves like nourish the tree, but the leaf needs the tree needs the leaves. And leaf kind of has the property of like being multiplicitous. You never have just one leaf. So it always makes me think of like the church. The church isn't just one person, it's all these different people, and there's this feedback where like, the people in the church kind of live spiritually via the church, but the church also lives like via the people. So it kind of has like a tree leaf feedback loop going on there. That's about as deep as I can get. I don't actually have a high IQ, I just pretend I do. So that's about as deep as I can get, but it's deep enough for us to get a picture situation going right now, which is really the whole reason why we're here. And you know the deal, I'm going to square off our picture area right now. And actually one word that I missed, I'm going to use kind of like a golden color to square off the picture. Why not? Let's just let's change it up a little bit. And one word that I didn't hit there that I really liked a lot in that context, because I kind of want to reclaim this word a little bit. It's a word that I don't want to say it's been sullied. I just will say that it's been, because it hasn't been. But it's people don't really think of it in a Christian context really ever because of a variety of factors. But it said he meditates in the way of righteousness. And I really like that word, meditates. And I'm probably going to use that a little bit. We'll have our main guy, however we decide to render him, not meditating in like an Eastern capacity, but they don't have a monopoly on that term. They kind of do now in like the popular mindset. But I like that that was included also, so you can see why when I read that, I thought it would be a good idea to use it for our situation here. And you guys know the deal. As we go further along, I kind of spend more time in the chat. And there's some other stuff I want to talk about too that's not necessarily related to this, but we'll get going on the picture front first. The seat is 100% authority. The father sits at the head of the table. The boss has the big chair. And the one remaining seated in a room when others are standing is claiming authority. Fact check. True. Iron Grid says something really funny. Quote, I love this psalm. Me after reading any psalm. Yeah, that's true, actually. That's true. After I read everyone, I'm like, wow, that's a good one. Nice. That's a good one. I should bookmark that one. Okay. So what I'm thinking, picture style right now, conveniently, perhaps non-coincidentally, as we laid out that little chart that we just looked at, I'm thinking in the middle, we'll have our guy. I'm going to make him meditating, but I don't want him sitting like cross-legged because that does read very like Eastern mystic style. So we'll kind of see what we want him to be doing there. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll have him sitting. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Maybe he's sitting on a rock or something. So we'll have our guy in the center, and I want to have a big tree underneath, a big tree reaching like up into the heavens. That'll kind of let us get some fall color situation going on. It's still mostly summer outside, but you can feel a little fall in the air. So we'll probably get like some green-yellow tree situation going on. And then we'll have the left and the right that we can work with. We'll probably just choose one and make it kind of the way of like death and unrighteousness, and then the other one will make it positive way. And that's how it's going to go down right now. So I guess the first question, as always, is what color am I making the lines? What color am I making the lines right now? I got these 3 brushes on deck. I was watching, it's actually funny, I was in an Airbnb last night before I did my little excursion, and they had this thing called Roku on TV. It's kind of like Bizarro TV, where it has like some internet stuff and some like normal TV. This is not a paid advertisement. But they had a Bob Ross channel on there. And I was like, dude, how relevant can it get? And I watched it for a little bit, and it was funny because I was watching it, and I was like, oh, dude, I could probably like, learn something from watching this. I've watched it before, obviously. But the one thing I noticed, that I really noticed, is he has like 1 trillion brushes. The dude has like 100 brushes. So he can just easily switch between the colors without cleaning the brushes off, which is kind of tight. I might steal that, but I don't want to have that many brushes around the studio, honestly. But the other thing is he has a cameraman. And the cameraman is like actively panning in and panning out. And I was like, damn, that's such an advantage. And I was thinking about getting another camera. It's like really expensive, but maybe I could like swing it if I stopped feeding my dog like shrimp in parking lots off the side of the highway, which was only $2, by the way, at Whole Foods. Anyway, though, I was thinking about getting another camera, but then I was like, how am I going to incorporate that? Like, what am I going to do? Like, swing the camera in and then click a button and pan to the other camera? Like, I don't know. So that's something I was thinking about, but anyway, it's not really relevant to anything, but I just thought I would mention it. And I'm kind of torn between one of the smaller brushes and this one, but let's just use some fat brushes. But I noticed when Bob Ross was painting, he was using some exceptionally fat brushes, and it was very inspiring. So maybe we'll take a page from that book, and I just want to grab paper towel. Perfect. All right, now we're good to go. So I'm thinking for the lines, I'll kind of just paint in this guy, and I guess the way he's sitting is going to be a big factor for things. I kind of got to decide how I want to make that happen. And what I'm thinking is I'll make him sitting on a rock, because then I can kind of get away with him being posed like he's sitting meditating, but it won't really read like he's cross-legged. So that's how we're going to do it. And I wonder, should I use a smaller brush? No, let's not do it. Let's commit fully. So I'm using burnt umber over here, and I just want to make sure I get the right thickness going on over here. We'll probably also use it for the tree itself, and I just want to make sure this brush is sharpened. So what I'm going to do is, let's just go for it. I'm going to paint this guy in. This will be our righteous guy. We're going to go with the round head. That's the style. We're trying to land to that 400 BC, 400 AD style right now. So I'll come in over here, but we'll make it a little bit more sophisticated than we normally do. Not too much. He'll be wearing something. It's going to be a big call if he's wearing like modern clothes or not, but We'll kind of decide that. Maybe we'll make it ambiguous. We'll come over here, put in his shoulders. We'll have his hands just kind of like resting on his knees or something over here. Boom. Just have his hands kind of resting like that. Perfect. And then I'm going to make it ambiguous how he's sitting a little bit, because we'll kind of just make the top of his clothes. And what I want to do, which I left the perfect amount of room for, is have his feet coming out. Perfect. And then they're coming in, boom, like this. So he's not sitting cross-legged. I don't want him to look like a Buddha or something. Don't want to give the wrong impression. But we can get away with this. Maybe he's got shoes, maybe he's barefoot. Can't really tell. I like kind of doing the figures where you're just reading like the most basic element of how they look. And then I'm going to leave the face blank. Actually, no, I'm not going to leave the face blank. We always leave the face blank. So I'm just going to paint in. He'll just be like a normal guy. I don't want to paint the hair in brown though. And he's got the closed eyes. He's thinking. He's thinking about some stuff. That's perfect. We'll start like this. If we want to come back and change anything, we can. Maybe we'll give him a halo. Let's just give him a halo right off the bat. He's like a righteous guy. Could have given him a square halo to indicate that he's living, but then it's like we're making him like a living saint. I feel like this is nice and ambiguous. And we'll just leave it like that. And then we kind of got to decide. That looks dope. It looks cool on the camera too. I'm looking at the way this paint is like kicking up through the paper. It looks perfect. And we kind of got to decide how we want to make this tree behind him. I'm kind of torn, honestly, because part of me wants to make it fit. Like, you know, if we cut it off, then it can be like reaching up into the heavens. But part of me also wants to make it just like spilling off the page. I think that would be kind of dope, honestly. Like it's some like 30, 40 foot tree or something. So let's just go for it. Did my arm get lit on fire? No. For people making fun of my skinny arms, though, I did gain weight. So deal with that. Deal with that. If you mean back here, it's because the camera exposure is really high. I have to like pump the lights really hard to make the paper look white. Okay, so I think we should just go for what I just said, and let's just paint up the tree. Let's just switch over the brushes. I'm going to switch to a bigger brush, actually, and let's just paint up this tree situation right now. The verse we're working with did talk about fruit on the tree, so we could even take it there. And what I'm thinking is, normally when I do tree stuff, you guys have probably seen me do it before, but I'm like, I'm getting in there and I'm drawing each little leaf in and stuff, but I think I kind of want to just push the like painterly element of it. Let's just go for it and go a little crazy, and if it looks bad, we can rope it back in, but I don't think it will. So I think we're going to start with sap green. In terms of the fall color situation that we were talking about, it's not really fall yet. I don't want to be like that person jumping the gun and like pumping pumpkin spice lattes or whatever while it's still like shorts and t-shirt weather. But I do want to get a little bit like it's fall is just poking over the horizon in the tiniest way. So we'll probably roll really hard with the sap green. We'll get the Viridian going on. Those are my two favorite greens. This is like a warm green. This is a cool green. This one's really opaque. This one's really transparent. And then we'll put in a little bit of yellow. I'll get these two yellows going. Then we have warm yellow and cool yellow. But let's see how it goes mostly with the greens. And then I'll also have white on deck so I can opaque, i.e. Make not transparent up the greens a little bit. And also the white kind of chalks up the colors, and if I'm using them really, really loosely, the white will also make them not transparent. So let's just see how it goes. It's unfortunately rare that we really just roll the dice and don't know what's going to happen on here. I feel like we should do that a little bit more, so that's what we're going to do right now. I would drink pumpkin spice lattes in July if they let me. Yeah. I actually do really like pumpkin stuff, honestly. I'm not for any pretentious reason, I don't really do the pumpkin spice latte thing, but sometimes when people bake stuff, I do mess with the fall flavors. I feel like deep down, every I don't know what, can't assume anything about anyone, but I feel like at least every white person secretly feels like called, like when like salmon get called up the stream when it's fall. Most white people I know who I can really speak to their inner nature authoritatively. Something calls them, they're like, oh my god, it's happening. They're getting out the flannel shirts. They're loading up the car. They're doing fall stuff. I think everyone knows about that. Okay, so my instinct is that we should just go to town with the sap green and just see how this looks. I want to get it really, really loose and wet. It's not as crazy saturated as it looks over here. I have this really intense light over here. Yeah, actually, perfect. You can see. But I think the warmness of the paper will kind of come through. But if it's too crazy green, then we'll do something else. Oh, yo, you know what I should do, actually? I'm really glad I stopped myself. I'm going to wet the paper first. I always feel like I should have wet the paper in retrospect, and now I'm actually going to remember. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw down some water so that we are not painting directly onto the dry paper. There's a little blue on this brush, but it's okay. It's actually kind of good. It'll cut the yellowness of the green a little bit. I could have cleaned the brush a little bit more to make sure that wouldn't happen, but I was also open to it happening. So we'll kind of just paint that out a little bit. Cool. And that will wetten the fibers of the paper up and make it so that when we put in this color, yeah, you can see it'll start to like bleed out a little bit. And it's already it's a little crazy green. It's a little, it's actually kind of a nice color, but I don't want it to just be so monochromatic. So I'm gonna get this darker green in also. Then we'll get some like layers coming in. It's actually not even really as dark as I wanted, so I'm just gonna grab some of this brown. Might be a little too dark, but let's see. I think we should just kind of go for it here. See how this goes. But this brush isn't really big enough. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe I need to use the bazooka. Maybe that's the issue. And I'm just going to go for it with the sap green. In here. Nice. That's a little better. I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to load up the brush like crazy. This brush can hold a ton of pigment. Look at this going in here. This will be kind of like our base, I guess. And I actually can, a little trick, I can go in with some water even. I can just dunk the brush in the water and just throw the water down. And that'll give me a little bit of light. The water on the brush will kind of disperse the paint a little bit. I can also take some of my paper towel over here, which I am going to do right now. Look at that big green. So I'm just going to come through and kind of like blot up. Oh, if I shake the table, it shakes the camera. I'm just going to kind of blot up some of the pigment. Get a little, yeah, that's good. Kind of interesting texture, but not really exactly where we want to be at just yet. I guess I have to make it coming out a little bit more so it looks more like a real tree. So I'm going to get some of this green. Maybe we can just kind of come over here. And I'm going to keep adding paint and picking it up and just seeing what we can get going on. I'm going to come back in with the water. And if you're painting like this, it's not really honestly like a huge deal how it looks because you can always kind of change things or, it's really easy to kind of like tweak it. I kind of wanted like a big like, I don't want to use the word chaotic, but that kind of is what I was going for actually. Let's throw down some of this green again. You can see the issue I mentioned all the time where you're wrestling with the reality of the pigments that you're using because this dark green that you see over here is kind of exactly the color I want, but it's so transparent that when I throw it down, it doesn't stay that color. So I have to really like load up the brush. And now I'm going to start to think how I can maybe kind of, I'm thinking of like a real tree now and how it would be like a little darker on the bottom. I like this kind of like openness that I got going over here. Maybe the light has to be like coming in one direction, so maybe there's more dark over on this side of the tree. That'll also kind of make it look more sculptural. And maybe I'm about to open up another, that looks pretty cool actually. I'm tempted to open up another one of these greens. I do have olive green, but I'm kind of worried that it won't really be the right color. Let's not do that. Let's stick with the colors we got. I'm gonna throw down, let's see, I'm gonna throw in some lemon yellow into the sap green, and that'll give us a little bit of a brighter green, a little bit more on the yellow-green spectrum. I kind of want to get a little close to pear color, honestly. I feel like the pear greens are very like good for this time of year, so that's what we're gonna do right now. I need a little bit more than that. I might need some white to kind of fill it out a little bit. You can see I dropped it down, but you can't even tell. Might have been a little bit too much, but we'll see. Yeah, it looks good. We'll get a little bit over here. Like maybe there's some leaves like catching the light over here. Just like a little bit, yeah. Nice. That's dope. I actually really like that because I feel like it'll contrast really well with everything else we're doing. And maybe I'll come in here and put some like fruit on the tree. Let's see. I want to see about integrating more like chaotic stuff into how it's going. We're going to need more darks for sure, especially because the guy is so dark. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to come in right now and I'm just going to grab this dark brown and I'm just going to throw it down behind this guy. Do I want the trunk to be that dark though? I think I'm going to grab a lighter brown. Let's see. I think it's going to be raw. We'll get some raw sienna in there. We'll get some of this nice like bread color. We'll mix them together. That'll be our tree trunk color. I could chalk it up with the white, but I don't know. It's not really my style, honestly. So we're just going to go for it. This is like the just going for it episode, and we'll see how things turn out. So let's see. This might not be dark enough, though. You know, actually, honestly, I was kind of inspired when I was watching Bob Ross a little bit because he was just aggressively mixing colors that I wouldn't normally mix together, and I feel like I'm going to channel that a little bit, honestly. So I put some Viridian. I put a little bit of green into the brown. Normally I wouldn't do that. Probably doesn't seem like a huge deal, but we'll make this tree fat because we want it to have that like kind of like stability and power that we mentioned. And what I suspect we're going to do is, so we got this like craziness, but what I bet we're going to do is mix up like a nice green, and then I'll come in and I'll paint the leaves on top of it, and that will like integrate it with the rest of the picture. Because right now, obviously, it looks like someone took a sponge and just like, you know, sponge the green out, which is kind of cool, but you know, I want the picture to like go together cohesively. So I'll kind of just use this as like a backdrop, and then I'll come in and paint on top of it. And also, since I want to keep pushing the texture thing, so I got the darkness of the trunk right there, and I'm going to try and have it spill out with the color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the pigment off the brush, and I'm going to just get some water. Someone asked a good question. They didn't tag me though, but someone asked, oh wait, there's a question above it. What's the deal with the halo shapes? Browsing Wikipedia, and they say there's a triangle halo. Yeah, actually, there are a bunch of halo shapes. I'll pull it up. There's a little section in Signs and Symbols in Christian Art, which is one of my favorite books on Renaissance art and stuff. And it talks about the different halo shapes. So I'm way more versed, like infinitely more versed in, I guess you could say, Western Christian painting, specifically like Renaissance painting and stuff, than I am for like icons. Like I would never like try and authoritatively talk about that at this point. My like art history studies never really bled that far into Eastern Europe and stuff, unfortunately. But in icons, I haven't seen very many halo shapes. Maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't. I personally haven't really seen it. Oh, I love this, how this looks over here. Looks really dope. I feel like there's some white balance going on with the camera, but it's all good. So you can see the paper shining up through and giving us this like super warm color here. It's really dope. Should I keep pushing the tree, or should I move along? Let's keep going with the tree. I don't want to leave anything abandoned. So now I have the situation where I got this dark green, and I really want to use this, but like I was saying before, it's too transparent. So I have to mix it with another color, and I'm kind of just wondering what that's going to be. I could mix it with the yellow. I don't really know what that would look like, actually. Let's find out. It's kind of interesting because this is a really cool green and this is a really cool yellow, so they might kind of go together and give us just like a nice bright green. But I'm going to have to chalk it up with the white a little bit. I know, I noticed that too. Someone said the camera keeps making the brown paint lighter and darker. I know, I noticed that before I started. Before I started filming, I thought it was the light bouncing off my hand, like because the light is coming and bouncing off my hand. But I don't know why. I have all the auto settings off, so I'll fix it before I film the next one. But for now, we're just going to roll with it. Okay, so I'm going to take this green right here and paint it in. And let's just see how this goes. I'm going to start over here. And I kind of want to just paint in. I want to get those pointiness of the leaves that I get sometimes. Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, perfect. But I don't want it to be too regular, so let's see. Cool. Let's see if I can kind of marry this pattern into the rest of the tree. Like not have it be 100% its own thing, nor have it be like totally disintegrated. So let's see, I'll probably do this a bunch, and then maybe I'll do like another pass of the, like already I'm thinking what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wet this up a little bit and then kind of just come in here and like kind of, yeah, perfect. Yeah, it's looking pretty dope actually. It's like it's almost there. We're like on this really dangerous edge of like getting exactly the effect I want versus not. So let's see. Just gonna come in here. Perfect. Perfect. Nice. I actually like how this is turning out. Cool. Yeah. And then I'm probably gonna come in with a lighter color too. Let's see if I can get some darker coming down over here. Perfect. Might have been a little too ambitious putting that down there, but it's okay. Cool. Yeah. I like how this is coming out, but it needs a little something different. I'm gonna grab the lighter colors and see what I can make happen up there, and then we'll probably move on. There's something about the tree though as a symbol. It's really, really tight. Okay, so maybe a little yellow. Is that going to be too crazy? Let's find out. I'm going to throw this cadmium yellow in. So the cadmium yellow is like school bus yellow. The two yellows I use are lemon yellow and cadmium yellow. So like I said, this is like the school bus yellow color. So let's see, maybe just a little bit of this. It might really not be what we're looking for, but let's see. I feel like I can honestly get away with it. Like just a little bit. Yeah, yeah, just like a little yellow. Almost like if you just looked at the picture quickly, you might not notice, but yeah, that's perfect actually. That's perfect. And yeah, I need another, this is like kind of like calligraphic with these strokes, which is cool, but I need another kind of manifestation of that. So I'm just gonna throw the white in. It might be way too much white. And I'm gonna grab this yellow green up here. I'm even gonna grab the Viridian, fuck it. Yeah, we'll do it down here. And let's see, I'm gonna try throwing down this. Yeah, that's perfect, because it matches the paper color a little bit, and it will kind of bring everything together, I think. Yeah, it's perfect. This is actually literally the perfect color. Perfect, perfect. Yeah, Lucky Lizard said very hungry caterpillar energy. Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, we're toying in that realm of like being more illustrative than like fine art painty, but I'm cool with that. That's kind of like where I hang out anyway, honestly. Might as well embrace it. Okay, I'm going to leave the tree like this because I feel like this gives us a little room. I think it looks kind of dope actually, but it gives us a little bit of room to play around a little bit. Like we could come in and put something in the tree, or we could put like fruit in the tree, or you know, we could even block it off in the middle and like get something going on in there. Like it might be kind of tight if it's like night on the outside and then we make this window into like, you know, the blue sky in the middle with like a sun or something. That could be really dope actually. For now, let's leave the tree though. And yeah, since I commented on it, it's kind of interesting. You know, it's funny like doing the painting situation with the cameras because it's kind of like when you scan a piece of art, it's never going to look the same on the computer. So I've tried a few like different things trying to make it like accurate. This is kind of as close as I could get. I'm looking at the paper and I'm looking at it in the screen, and it actually does look pretty close. This is not as dark in real life, to be honest with you, but it's about as close as we're going to get. Anyway, moving on. So let's see. Let's take it back to our little chart over here. We got paths, so obviously I'm going to throw down some paths. I think I'm just going to have them coming from like behind the tree, or maybe over here. So we'll have it coming up and around. We'll have a little bit of a horizon going on. So we'll have like the path righteous style and the path unrighteous style. And I kind of know what I want to have going on for like the throne. It wasn't called like a throne of iniquity. What was it called? Maybe it just was called a throne. But whatever it is, I really like that image. And I think what we should do is have some kind of like gray, kind of like sometimes you see in the background of like Orthodox icons and stuff. They have these like square mountains. Have you seen that before? It's kind of like these mountains where it's almost like a pyramid, and it comes up to this flat top. It's a really, really cool aesthetic, actually. And I think that would be perfect because, not that I'm going to do that exactly, but something like that, because it'll come up, and then we can have a little chair sitting at the top of this like mountain situation. And we'll make it kind of like rocky, we'll make it kind of like gray, so that's what we'll do right now. So I'm going to put these paints back, and let's just kick into the gray situation. And I kind of have like a divergent path going on right now that, just to let you guys know what I'm thinking, because I could just kick into black plus white gray and throw it down. That's going to give me like a slate gray, like a gray wall in like a hotel. It's going to be like a very dead gray, which is kind of perfect for like, the bad path, kind of the path of iniquity or whatever you want to call it over here. But I really just don't want to throw down like a dead gray like that. I really don't want that. So I'm trying to decide if I'm going to cheat or if I'm going to mix a gray for real. You can mix a gray by mixing two colors that are opposite on the color wheel. We've talked about that before. So blue and orange I could mix to make a gray. Why don't I just do it? Well, actually, what I'll do... Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I figured it out. So I kind of hesitated there because I thought, secretly that means underneath the gray will be containing like the essence of like blue and orange. And I don't really know how much orange we're going to have in the picture. So even though you visually won't see it directly, it will kind of influence like the tone and color of the picture. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to mix up a little gray classic style. So if you were in like a classical oil painting studio or something like that, you actually wouldn't have a black tube of paint usually, especially if you were a beginner. What you would have is a bunch of colors. You just wouldn't have black. And you would mix gray by having ultramarine blue and burnt umber, because brown is really orange, right? You can think of it like if you see a rainbow. I don't know if we've talked about this too much before, but if you see a rainbow, there's no brown, right? That's because brown is really dark orange or dark yellow or sometimes dark red. But here this brown is dark orange. So when I mix this dark blue and this brown, it's really like mixing blue and orange, which I just said makes gray. So that's how we're going to do it. Yo, I got a super chat from Ben. He said, "Bless up Tuesday, gang." Epic. Epic. The studio humbly accepts your super chat donation to the studio. It will be wisely invested, for sure. Okay, so we're going to mix ultramarine blue with the burnt umber, and let's see what we get. Let's see what we get going on right here. And I already have a little bit of white out, but I'm just going to throw it down. So otherwise, kind of as we go along, we cover the main sort of topic, the symbolic nature of what we're doing, and then usually I also kind of like to talk about what's on my mind or read the chat and see what you guys are thinking, but it's pretty unrelated to what we're painting, but I will just step into it for a second because we've been going for, a little bit of time here. But so I mentioned before, everything always kind of like cohesively comes together into like one story for the show. So I mentioned before, someone asked me what happens when I get depressed. It kind of came up. I brought it up anyway. But I was doing some medical stuff today, and it's really funny because you guys, we don't like know each other directly, but from watching this, you guys probably know me like pretty well, maybe more so than some other people I know in real life, honestly. But what always happens is, so when I go, right, this is relevant to like something, not just rambling. So you can see I got this dark color here, and when I throw in the white, you can see that I got this gray. The gray is actually a little too brown though, and I want it to be more blue, so I'm going to throw down some blue, and that is the exact color gray I wanted. That's the exact gray I wanted. In fact, you probably heard me when I said it'll give me a slate gray, and I use that in a bad way. I kind of hesitated because slate gray really isn't like a dead gray. Slate gray is actually a really nice color. It's like a really kind of like dark, cool gray, and that's exactly the color I want. So I almost got it here. And I think that's good. We'll kind of roll with that. You can see it's bleeding into the green and stuff, but it's all good. So I'm going to kind of throw down this horizon right now. We have an intense and intimate parasocial relationship. Honestly, it's true. I really do feel such a heinous level of camaraderie with random people on the internet that I've probably talked to, a few dozen times or something. I really do. weirdos on the internet are really my people, honestly. So it's true, no jokes. But anyway, so I'm going to paint in this kind of like mountainy thing. I didn't really consider how I am using the space over here, so it's like I kind of thought I had more room than I did. It's not really a big deal. But what I'm going to do is kind of just paint this like one of those like squarey mountains. So while I'm talking, I'll kind of just block this out and we'll kind of just go for it. And then I guess, you know, right when I put this line in, I'm realizing that I don't really want it to be like 3D. I really want to ride the like 2D space. I really can't tell actually how I should play it, because I could make it flat and then get the chair on top of it. Or I could have it be like this. I really can't tell. Well, I already put this in, so let's roll with it. Let's see how it goes. And I'm just going to kind of try and paint this in like rock style while I'm talking. So anyway, when I go do that stuff that I was mentioning, I have to basically like, I get blood work done. Again, this is relevant to something. And long story short, you get blood work done. It takes like an hour or two for them to like look at it, and then you talk to someone, right? So I'm always like, oh, I'm going to be sitting there for like, you know, an hour or two, you know, and I bring all these like theology books, and then I get there and I'm just like really not in the mood to read anything like that serious, you know, like it's kind of a downer to be in there, like thinking about all this like serious stuff, and I kind of want like an escape from it rather than like confronting it, which maybe you could say is bad, but you know, whatever. Everyone has their human nature, right? Oh man, that's so blue. Am I gonna roll with it? I kind of am, I guess. It's really blue. It could be like reflecting the sky though. Let's see, I'm gonna kind of try and throw in some darker color there. So my point is that I always have all these books. Like today I had, what did I have with me? I had The Orthodox Veneration of the Mother of God by John Maximovich. Saint John Maximovich in the Orthodox Church. And I also had, what was the other thing I had? I don't remember because I didn't read it. But I had a bunch of stuff. Then I got in there and I was like, wow, I really just want like a distraction actually. So I ended up looking at my phone. And the night before I'd been talking to my wife about the Mandela effect. And it's so funny because I think that's like one of the funniest, like not conspiracy, but like faux paranormal / like paranormal topics. Because like it's so stupid, but it also like actually adds up to something. And it was just funny because I spent like 2 hours in this doctor's office just like reading about the Mandela effect, because like I said, I was like, dude, I really don't want to read about like life and death and stuff in here. I want to read about something like kind of funny or whatever. And it was really interesting looking into it, man. And it kind of, you know, I'm not going to go off about the Mandela effect right now, maybe I will later, but it really made me think about like false memories and collective memory and stuff like that. What I'm thinking with this mountain right now is I kind of just have to throw down these colors, and then what I'll do is when it's dry, I'll go back in, and that's what will let me get the rocky texture. The wet on wet works really well for, oh, there we go, now you can see. The wet on wet works really well for the leaves and stuff because they kind of have this like flowy, you know, you can see how it happened, but this kind of like blurry, bleeding out effect for a rocky mountain isn't really going to work. So I'm just going to kind of let these colors dry. I'll kind of just like make them flat. I'll let this dry, and then I'll use this as a base to paint over the rocks and stuff over it. So just so you know what I'm thinking, that's what I'm thinking right now. And anyway, yeah, it was kind of funny because it made me think about like collective memories and all these weird things like that. I don't know if anyone has any experiences with like false memory and stuff, but it's really interesting. Like this one time, I never stopped thinking about this once it happened to me. I was with my mom somewhere, and we were with my aunt. And my mom was telling this story, and it was like a very specific story. Like she was living in New York, and she was walking home from work. I'm just going to like kind of give you the little spiel so you can see it's not like just a story that would really happen to anyone. She was like living in New York, and she was working at this place. And when she walked home, she had to walk through Central Park. So she walked through Central Park at night, which is like really stupid in case you're not from New York, especially like back then at that time. And this one night, this like really weird like Hasidic Jewish guy like followed her home and was like chasing her, and she was like running. And then when she got to the doorstep of her door, there was these guys that like sold drugs outside of her house. This is like what New York was like, I guess, back then. And these guys were always sitting there on the front steps in her apartment building. So they see this woman running scared, and you know, it's like an honor among thieves like mentality a little bit. So they're like, oh, what's going on? And she was like, this guy's chasing me. Like, I don't know what to do. And she was like freaking out. So these drug dealers got up and like chased this guy away who had been like following and chasing my mom. And she said they like followed him away, and then she never saw him again. Kind of an interesting story. Anyway, the point though is that it's a very specific story. Like the guy was like a Hasidic Jewish guy, and these drug dealers living on the steps of her apartment. Like it's a very specific tale. And we were out somewhere, and my mom told that story, and then when she finished it, my aunt was like, "Yo, that happened to me." She was like, "That didn't happen to you. That happened to me, and I told you that story, and now you're misremembering, and now you think it happened to you." She didn't say it that rudely. Kind of she did, actually. And my mom was like, no, that happened to me, and I told you that story, and you must be the one misremembering. And it was so interesting because, I mean, obviously neither one of them would back down because they both really thought it happened to them. And then we just left it at that. And then eventually, like, the subject got changed, but I thought that was so fascinating. I was much younger at the time. And I thought it was so interesting because I was like, yo, what? Like, you guys can't even agree on who this happened to? Like, how is that possible? Like, what level of, like, false memory are you on right now? So I thought that was really interesting. And in case you don't know about Mandela effect, that's what it revolves around. Like, people having these, like, collective false memories. And, yeah, it's funny because people in the chat are like, oh, it's kind of dumb. Or, like, no one said that, but basically, Or, like, oh, it feels like a psyop sometimes, which is kind of true, but it's funny because you look into it and you're like, oh, this is kind of dumb. And then you find one that applies to you and you're like, yo, what the fuck? I literally remember it being that way. And it was just funny because I kept finding them like that. And it was really interesting, and I figured I'd end up talking about it just like this on the show because, whenever I do the show, I kind of casually talk about whatever has been on my mind that day. And I like the colors over here, but I don't like the texture at all. So like I said before, we're going to kind of let this dry and then we'll build it up a little bit. I'm going to paint in the path over here while I'm talking. I already know what color I'm going to use for that. Obviously, the path color on the show is yellow ochre. So I kind of knew I would end up talking about it here with you guys. Not like a whole speech or exposition or something, but kind of end up talking about whatever's on my mind and stuff, And it was just so interesting because I was wondering what intersection it has with like weird mystical stuff and theology. Because like sometimes on the one hand, you can say like, well, even the story I just gave you, that could have like a mundane explanation. It could be that maybe my mom told my aunt the story and, let's just make something up. Maybe my aunt does a lot of drugs. She doesn't, but my mom kind of does. So maybe it might happen the other way around. But the point is that you could have some mundane explanation. You could be like, oh, well, obviously this person told this person the story and they got confused and that makes sense. But what really gets me is when people have like hardcore memories of something. Like I even have one. This is really stupid. I didn't really look into it to see if it has a mundane explanation because I didn't really care that much about it yet, and I had to like get things together. But I remember Chick-fil-A being spelled not as the word chick, C-H-I-K or C. I actually don't really remember, which kind of discredits me, but it doesn't really matter for the purpose of me just giving you this example. And I remember that because I remember seeing it and thinking like, oh, it's like a Southern Christian restaurant. They shouldn't have spelled it incorrectly because that kind of makes them look uneducated. It kind of plays into the hands of like people who want to make them look stupid. And then I looked it up today on the internet and it's always been spelled C-H-I-C-K. And I went to their Wikipedia and I was like, oh, they must have changed it, but they didn't. And there's even people asking, like on forums and like asking the Chick-fil-A Twitter account and all this stuff, like, hey, when did you change your name? It used to be C-H-I-K, and they were like, we never did. It's always been C-H-I-C-K. And it's so weird because for me, I remember, like I just said, I have a memory where I'm like, oh, I just explained it to you, something very specific being like, I remember it not being that. And it's kind of hard for me to rationalize it and be like, okay, I guess me and all these other people. And I went on Twitter and I went into some of the group chats that I'm in. And I was like, hey guys, like without checking, how do you spell that Christian restaurant that, they're Christian and, sometimes the chicken restaurant? And a bunch of people were like, oh, it's Chick-fil-A. And they were like, I remember it being that. But then I was like, look it up. It's not. And it never was, apparently. So it's kind of hard for me to rationalize that because it kind of dovetails with like a lot of weird paranormal stuff where like maybe there's like an explanation that is normal, obviously. Of course, you have to say that's possible. I'm going to throw it on the other horizon and put the other path while I'm talking to you guys right now. Actually, I'm going to grade this out a little bit. We'll make this kind of like dead and like brown dirt and stuff over here. But whenever you get those explanations, then you have to ask yourself, well, why doesn't that apply to everything? I mean, why aren't there people being like, hey, remember when it was like McDonald's, like MAC, but like that doesn't happen? Or people being like, you know, XYZ or whatever. And yeah, someone said maybe it's because they eat more chicken campaign. Yeah, you would think that, but honestly, like this makes me sound like kind of stupid. But like I remember when I first moved to the South, seeing it in the neighborhood that I live in on the sign and specifically looking at it and thinking about it. But I mean, I could have just misread it, like whatever. I'm not saying that there's some like, that this is like stone cold evidence of some like nefarious activity or something. But what interests me is when people have like specific memories, and there's all these people online who like remember movies that never happened. And it's kind of the same deal where you're like, oh, well, you must be mixing up like movie A and movie B, right? But then they have stories where they're like, no. I remember being with my cousin and we were trying to decide which movie to watch, and we talked about this movie, and now it doesn't exist, and stuff like that. And it's just really interesting, man. It's just like so profoundly weird, and it was a really nice distraction today while I had more like heavy things to think about. And it's one of those like things where there's a bunch of really stupid ones. Like you can find people being like, when I was a kid, like I remember learning that France was in like a different location, and now it's in a different place. And it's like, okay, well, obviously you just learned like the wrong thing. That's not that crazy. But some of them are weird, man. Some of them are really weird, and I really wondered how it intersected with like everything else that I'm into, you know, whether explaining it from like the, well, you know, people just misremember things, and then how people misremember things collectively, or if there is some weird like paranormal explanation. So that was really interesting. It's kind of one thing I was thinking about a lot today. I'm going to make him sitting on this nice like green grass, like he's in this like beautiful lush space. So I don't know what you guys think about that. If you've never looked into it, it's something really interesting to look into, because, and I really like how this kind of like dead, dirty area came out over here. Because I bet that there's at least one where you might be like, oh, wow, I remember that, though. And it's funny because you're looking through the list and you're like, these people are so stupid. But then you find one and you're like, wait, I remember that. The Fruit of the Loom logo is a really good one. I don't want to bias anyone, but if you imagine what the Fruit of the Loom logo is and what it entails, and then take out your phone and Google it, you might be surprised that it's missing an element that you were just pretty sure that it had a second ago. I don't want to like tell you what it is and bias you against it, but a lot of people remember the Fruit of the Loom logo having something that it doesn't. I'm going to come back to that, so if you want to look it up on your phone or something, do it, because that's one of the more interesting ones, and I will talk about that in a second. So you get like a few minute moratorium on looking that up. Actually, I'm just going to say it right now, so you better have done it if you wanted to. So a lot of people remember the Fruit of the Loom logo having a cornucopia in it, which I did also. Maybe you remember it too. But when you look it up, it never had a cornucopia in it, right? And that's interesting because you're like, all right, well, you know, maybe people misremember it. People, like I said, people misremember things all the time. But it's weird because, you know, people are like, oh, I used to work for like Fruit of the Loom, and I remember it having a cornucopia. And there's even this jazz album called Flute of the Loom that has a flute as a cornucopia, exactly as all these people like me, for example, remember the cornucopia being there. And someone, God bless this level of like obsessive like autism, but someone reached out to the person who painted that jazz album, and they were like, hey, why did you put a flute this way on the jazz album? And the person actually responded, and they were like, because, you know, there's that basket, and I put the flute in to look like the basket. The album's called Flute of the Loom, you know, you get it. And the person wrote back like, yeah, there's no basket though. There's no basket, go look at it. And the other person wrote back and they were like, yo, I know there was a basket there, because why else would I paint this album cover this way? You know, the whole point is I was parodying the Fruit of the Loom logo. And just stuff like that. It's so weird, man. And like, I kind of like it because like usually conspiracy and paranormal stuff is like, hey, there's aliens and, you know, you might get abducted and raped by them. And guess what? They're actually really demons and Satan controls the earth. And it's like, that's cool. It's not really that fun though. I mean, damn, that's pretty real. But the Mandela effect stuff is so like pointless. You know, it's so stupid. It's like, well, we all remember there being a basket there, but there's not. But then at the same time, it just kind of like feels meaningful in some way, doesn't it? Doesn't it feel like that's weird? I'm sure someone listening to this who's never looked into it is like, yo, I remember the basket. And you're probably Googling it being like, dude, Owen is totally tripping out right now. But, and if you don't remember it, then you're like, this is so stupid. Like, what are you talking about? But I'm sure someone remembers that's listening. Anyway, I thought that was really interesting. Let's see if anyone mentioned in the chat. Post hoc causality. Yeah, it's weird though, because if you really crack out on it, like I did for the last like few days, I didn't like invest a large amount of time in it, but I did kind of crack out on it. You can go to other people. I went to my wife and I asked her stuff like that, and you can be like, hey, you know that word, how do you spell that? And they'll give you the answer that you're looking for sometimes. And then it's hard to explain as an after the fact thing, because my wife obviously has never looked into this stuff because she's like a sane individual, aside from being married to me. So then it gets pretty weird. Like I was texting people on my phone and I was like, hey, do you remember like this? Like, and they'd be like, yeah. And I'd be like, yo, it's not like that actually. It's not like that. And there's a bunch of movie ones too. It's also mostly with like pop culture, which is kind of interesting because pop culture, obviously, I mean, you're watching this show right now, has like kind of like a usually like nefarious satanic element to it. So that's also interesting. That's mostly pop culture. People remember this girl in like a James Bond movie having braces, but she doesn't. And it's only, I never watched the James Bond movie, so I can't really comment on it. But that one's just interesting because in the scene, I did kind of look it up. Like, her having braces is like integral to this joke and like plot point that they're hitting. And then you go back and watch it and she doesn't have them, and all these people remember her having braces. And stuff like that is kind of hard for me to explain. I heard that in the Scary Movie films, if you're familiar with that, there's that scene where the guy says, I see white people instead of I see dead people, parodying the Scream movies, but apparently that never happened and it wasn't really like that. I don't really look into that one too much, but that one kind of tripped me out a little bit because I vividly remember seeing that on TV and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting, and it just made me think about, a lot of things, like collective consciousness is kind of an interesting topic, like it could be something to do with that. And then the fact that it's always like creative things, or often creative things, is interesting because, like, I don't know, maybe there's something about like people creating stuff and it being kind of like lodged in this like semi like liminal space in the mind that's like floating, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting and kind of like weird. I don't really have like a conclusion about it. It's kind of a fun little escape. But yeah, so dude, I totally remember that Scary Movie scene. Yeah, I didn't look into that one, honestly, because, I was like doing stuff today. But a bunch of people online were saying that if you go back and look it up, it's not like that, and it actually never happened. But I didn't look into it, so I can't 100% verify that. Are you familiar with the Jesuit priest Pierre Toulouse de Chardin? Yeah, and his idea of the Omega Point? Yeah. In Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, it says this idea is based on Hinduism. Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't really hit the Toulouse de Chardin thing too much. It does kind of bleed into like weird quantum-y, maybe not explicitly quantum mechanic-y stuff, but it does get into like a really weird space. But no, I haven't hit him too much. He's coming up in this lecture that I'm listening to soon, so I'll let you know what I think, but I haven't checked it out too hard. The Mandela effect is weird in how it focuses around popular culture and media. Yeah, exactly. Someone said due to, oh yeah, same chat. Yeah, so I don't know, put that on your guys' radar, maybe dig up some weird stuff about that. But underneath if you look into it, underneath all the really stupid stuff, there is some really interesting stuff, like people hardcore having memories of events and stuff that never happened. And that kind of does trip me out, honestly. Okay, I'm going to paint I really love how this ground came out, by the way, while I was talking. Sometimes while I'm talking, it kind of like just all comes together really well, which is tight. Got this kind of dead area, kind of the life area. Did you ever look into creepy cases like the Elisa Lam death? Will you do a creepy painting and spooky tale stream closer to Halloween? Yo, we should kick into spooky stuff closer to Halloween. Yeah, some people were saying that some details of that case changed too, but then then you're really getting into like that could be people misremembering. But apparently in a lot of the accounts now it says that hatch was like open and that they saw her in like a different way than you might remember. So you might want to look into that. I didn't look into it yet. But yeah, I've looked into a lot of creepy stuff like that. We'll definitely do some Halloween stuff about that. In case people don't know what we're talking about, there's this like relatively famous, and I kind of want this chair to be like a little abstract. I don't want it to be like a hardcore chair necessarily, although I am open to that. And then I'll paint back down into the mountain, and then we'll kind of see where we want to take it from there. Yeah, in case people don't know what we're talking about with the Elisa Lam thing. Yeah, it's one of those cases where like this woman was found in this, she was basically, I don't want to butcher the case too much, but she was basically found like in this water tower or something that there was no way to actually get into. And it's just like a mystery how it happened. It's just one of those kind of like creepy but real things. So yeah, maybe closer to Halloween we'll hit a bunch of stuff like that. That would be kind of cool. Okay, so I'm going to just like kind of throw in, let's see, I'll darken this up a little bit. So I got like the vertical part of the chair there. And I think if I put the arms in, it'll look like a chair. And I just want to get the top nice and crisp. Nice and crisp. Perfect. Speaking of spooky tales, has anyone given you Fishman sightings yet? No. No. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like, how do you explain that shit? It's so weird. I mean, we'll get off the topic in a second in case this is boring for people, but it's so weird. Like, you find someone who's like, yo, I worked at this company and I remember specifically that the logo was like this. Not Fruit of the Loom, there's other ones too. And then you go look at it and it's not like that. So, I mean, like, yeah, people misremember things, but like, I don't know. It just gives me like the weirdest feeling, honestly. I feel like there's something more there that I'm kind of missing. Once again, I have to kind of wait for this to like dry up a little bit to get the rocky texture that I want. But you can see we're going to have a nice, cool little chair up there. I think with the arms, it'll be a little bit less abstract. But so we'll kind of give it these like suggestive arms. But we're going to have to come back to get the dark colors in. I'll come in and put like some light on the mountain over here, and that'll give it that like rocky texture that I'm looking for. So yeah, I don't really know what to make of all that, but I think it's interesting. And then, like I said, I think it kind of intersects with like theological and mystical stuff in an interesting way, because a lot of the like woo-woo, like mystical mind stuff, you know, just in general, whether it's like pretty much anything, you know, poking into your mind and seeing what's going around, so much of it revolves around like the story you're telling yourself and how like you are. It's like we were talking about before, actually. Everything always kind of comes full circle. When we're talking about like being depressed and like what you do about it, like the only thing you can control is like, you know, what's going on in your mind to a certain extent. And like part of that, I'm really torn because I want to make bumps, but I think I'm going to try and paint in like angular rocks and get kind of like a rocky texture going on. Oh, it's way darker than I thought. Look how light that looks. And then look how dark it actually is. It's the same color. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because it kind of has to do with like how malleable your mind is. You know, even if you scrape all the paranormal explanation for it and just say, well, people misremember stuff, it's so interesting, man. Like people having stories like, oh, I remember, like one guy was talking about the Isla Vista shootings, and he was like, I remember being in my parents' house, let's say in like a random town like Pigeondale. You know, we lived in this house in Pigeondale. It was a yellow house. And I remember being in the living room in there and watching it on TV, and then we talked with my parents about like, you know, sex and guys and how men can be really violent and like, you know, all this stuff or whatever. But then they look it up and they're like, you know, that shooting happened in 2014 and we moved out of that house in 2013. So even though I remember it, we couldn't have been there, you know? And just like stuff like that is so interesting because it's like, well, I guess in your mind you misremember stuff. I don't know. It sounds stupid, but it's just surprising that you could have these like concrete memories that you that are actually inaccurate. There's these groups that study like people's response to trauma, and apparently there's this big study about how after 9/11 people's confidence. So there's people that like study like tragedy and trauma and like terrorism and stuff like that. Then we'll kind of get off this topic because we've kind of like expanded it unless someone has something else they want to weigh in with. But there's people that exist like just to study trauma and how people respond to trauma. So like 9/11 happened and there's all these people like getting their PhD theses like ready to go, you know. I don't know if most people know that, or you could intuit it, but if you haven't thought about it. And they did these studies where they took, let's say, a batch of people and they interviewed them like 1 year after 9/11, 2 years after, 5 years after, even like 10 years after, you know. And people's confidence of how accurate their memories are never went down. So whenever they asked anyone, how sure are you of where you were when you heard about 9/11 and how it happened, they'd be like, I'm like 100% sure. And their confidence never went down. But the accuracy of their memories did decrease substantially. And people's stories changed over time, but they never realized it themselves. And that just like trips me out so much. Because then you hear that and you're like, wow, that's crazy. And then someone asks you, like, do you remember where you were when you heard about 9/11? And you're like, well, yeah, of course. You're like, well, of course I remember. Of course my memory is accurate because I know for a fact I was in this place with these people. I'm 100% sure. Even though you just heard about these people who misremembered it, you're like, yeah, but my memory can't be false because I'm totally sure. I think there's just something about that that's like so interesting. I don't know, though. Can't really pinpoint what it is, really. Okay, I'm going to start leaving this rock alone. We've been over here for a minute. I think I'll lay down these like mid-tones and light tones and stuff, and then we'll come back over here. It's a little bit lighter than I wanted, but it's okay. So I'll kind of leave it like this comic-y fat rock situation, and then I'll come back in. I don't really like how it looks, honestly, but I'm just going to roll with it for a minute, and then we'll come back in once everything's dry. I think I'm kind of trying to push it too hard while everything's still wet. And then it's not going to give me the look I want until I let it do its thing, and then I'll come back. So that's what we're going to do over here for a minute. Anyway, that was our little... Got to get one weird topic in for each show. And that's kind of the weird topic that we're in. Usually it connects to the painting. I don't really think that one does. I guess, I don't know. Okay. I don't know how this rock thing is coming out. I'm kind of tempted. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'm going to dig up. I like the seat. The seat looks tight, actually, on top. It's just this whole situation down at the bottom. I might just paint in the bottom, this whole side dark. It's kind of cool, like how it is actually. It's getting kind of tight. I can't tell if I should keep like poking at it or not though. Let's see. Maybe it's the darkness over here. I should have committed fully in one direction or the other and just done like watercolory style or painting in the rock. Actually, it's kind of looking kind of fresh right now. It's kind of getting there. Cool. Didn't talk about it, but mountains are obviously a really dope symbol. I guess in general, they kind of do represent stability, which is interesting because we talked about that being like one of the positive qualities. There we go. I had to move the camera a little bit. Actually, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good for right now. We'll leave it how it is, and then we'll come back to it if we want to. I gotta just stop fucking with it, but I really can't. I literally cannot tear myself away from this side of the picture. That looks pretty good. I just wanted to leave it so it wasn't like bad. But this is pretty good. I have to stop. I have to pull myself away. Okay. Cool. That actually looks pretty chill as far as a stone throne emerging from a craggy rock situation goes. I think we did a pretty good job over there. Let's see, I'll just make the background a little bit darker. I think it's possible these discrepancies are put in from the outside to make you think that something's there, a rabbit hole trap, like alien cone situation. Honestly, well, I mean, if anyone here has ever heard me talk about any like topic, like weird stuff like that, for me, I think it's kind of important to like weigh everything and consider every option. And I think most things come down to a mix of being a mundane explanation and being super physical. And I think that's kind of dangerous to discount one completely over the other. I mean, psychedelics are a perfect example of that because I think people kind of fall 100% one way or the other, where they're like, yeah, everything you see on psychedelics is real and there's like a parallel reality. Or they fall completely on the other side where they're like, yo, it's just drugs. It doesn't mean anything. And in reality, it's probably an interplay of those two things. Like sometimes it's just being on drugs. Sometimes it's probably intersecting with a super physical situation. That doesn't mean that every case of everything is like that. Man, I love these two paths mirroring over each other. So yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, honestly, I kind of do think there probably is some weird metaphysical thing with it, but it's kind of hard to square away because it could always be people's memories. But at the same time, like when hundreds of people all remember a movie that didn't exist, that's kind of weird, man. That's kind of fucking weird. So I can't say. I think it probably does have something to do with something super physical, though, obviously. Okay, we're doing great on time. It's 8:20. We're trucking along. This looks dope. Let's just quickly check back our little map real quick. This picture's looking pretty good, man. It's looking pretty good. Tree, stability, water, God. Let's read it again really quick just to make sure we're going along the right track. Because I want to see what we want to do on the right and what we want to put in the tree. So I'm just going to pull it up again really quick. We'll all be Psalm experts. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly. So counsel, we didn't really hit that. We could put like a weird person on the left, but I kind of think the left is kind of locked in. Nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the troublesome. We got that. But his will is the law of the Lord. So law, maybe we'll get like a shepherd's staff over on the right. That would be kind of dope. And in his law, he meditates day and night. So day and night. So we should make it night over on the left and make it day over on the right. He shall be like a tree planted by streams of water. We don't have any water. That's actually a good thing to notice. That produces its fruit in its season. So fruit, water. I should be writing this down, but I'm not. And his leaf shall not wither. And whatever he does shall prosper. Not so are the ungodly. Not so. But they are like the dust the wind drives from the face of the earth. Therefore the ungodly shall not rise in the judgment, nor sinners in the counsel of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous. but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Okay, so we got some, that was good. I'm actually glad we poked back in there because water, shepherd's staff. I'm going to put a really dope shepherd's staff, boom, right there. I just feel like the space is perfect. It's going to look dope. The only question is what color, really, and I'm just going to drop some brown in here, and we're going to pick this brown back up, and we're just going to roll with that. I don't want to introduce a new brown. I want it to kind of be a lighter version of this color. I don't want it to be as dark because we got the high contrast and focus here in the middle. But yeah. Ooh, dust cloud. That could be really chill, actually. Okay. Cool. If anyone has any weird Mandela effect stuff, by the way, if you put it in the chat and tag me, I will read it. Because I don't want to talk about it the whole time, but kind of what's on my mind, obviously. Kind of what's on my mind. Okay, so let's see. Shepherd's staff. Grab a little bit of this white, just a tiny bit of white. When you're painting like this, the white is so powerful. And you can always add more, but you can't take more away once you add it in. So I just wanted to grab a little bit. I've been using this brush like the whole time. I don't think I've used this brush on the stream before. Okay, so I'm just going to throw down the shepherd's staff. I would like to do it in one stroke, but I already fucked it up. So it's okay. I'm just going to come around this way. Oh yeah, someone before asked, any good books on Mary? The only book I've read fully on Mary. Nice. Nice. That's dope. The only book I've read fully on Mary, I haven't even finished it yet, is that book by St. John Maximovich. Obviously, there's a ton of Catholic books on Mary, but I haven't read them. I have one that I found in a thrift store. It's called like Mediatrix, Co-Redemptrix, has a bunch of titles, and it's all about Mary and Catholic tradition, but I haven't read it, so I can't recommend it necessarily. And then I don't really think there would be many Protestant books on Mary in the way that you presumably are looking for if you're asking me that question. But maybe there are. I don't know. Maybe there are. Maybe there's not, though. Okay. Way of the Righteous. I could put like a sunrise over here. That would be kind of sick. I think we should do that. Let's just do it. Which means I'm going to paint the gradient in the background. It's kind of playing a little bit of a dangerous game because really I should have thought of that before, and it's kind of hard to paint a gradient in behind stuff. But you know what? We're here to do difficult things. We're here to make well, okay, it's fine. We'll paint over that with the sun. I don't know why I did that. We're here to make difficult things happen. So I'm just going to grab this massive brush over here. And I think in terms of the fade, you know, sunsets, sunrises, I mess with it pretty hard, but I think we should just do yellow to blue. I'm worried if we get, what was I going to say? If we get like pink in there or something, then it's going to look too much like a sunset, and then that has kind of the opposite connotations of a sunrise. So we're just going to, oh, I got more paper towel over here. Perfect. We'll just go yellow to blue. Yo, honestly, you heard my phone just buzz right now. Just for the record, I unsubscribed from Donald Trump's email list. Not for any like malicious reason. I just I used to sign up for like every politician's email list because I was really interested in like propaganda and how it all goes down. But after getting like 200 emails a day, I was like, okay, too much. And I unsubscribed from Donald Trump's list, and I still get the emails. And I'm really wondering if they're just like, you know, whatever. I'm the president. What's he gonna do? And they're just like aggressively still sending me emails, even though I asked them to stop. It's kind of funny. But it's also annoying. Okay, so I'm throwing down the lemon yellow. And for the sky, normally I would use cerulean, but let's change it up. I kind of want to grab cobalt blue, which is right here. Cool. Perfect. And we'll just kind of get the fade. It's going to be interesting getting the fade because, as you obviously know, yellow fading into blue means you're going to get green, but I really don't want too much green in the fade because then it's going to mix too hard with the tree. So we're going to kind of play this pretty delicately, actually. And let's just see how it goes. So I'm going to throw down the water. The water already has some green in it from the tree because this brush holds so much water. If you were thirsty, you could literally drink out of this brush for like 2 full days. And I'm going to move the light a little bit. You saw me move the light a little bit over here just so it's not so shiny. Pioneering the lighting situation on my own. I go on some forums and I'm like, hey, how do I? And people are like, yeah, we just use the camera to shoot video game Twitch streaming. We don't do like watercolor painting with it, so we can't help you. But it's all good. Okay, I think I'm doing a pretty good job so far. Okay, so we threw down that color, and I'm just going to grab a little bit of the yellow. What I'm going to do is just throw down the yellow at the bottom, get it kind of shining up there. It's already kind of green. It's already a little green, but it's all good. And I'm going to wet the brush, and I want to kick that yellow up because I don't want it to just be concentrated down at the bottom. I want to drag it up a little bit. Let's drag it up a lot a bit. And then I'm going to grab the blue, and I'm going to do the opposite at the top. Perfect. And then we'll kind of just see how much I can make happen bringing it down. That actually looks pretty good already. Not that we're done, but it looks pretty good. Having the green in the back kind of, I thought that was going to not be a good thing, but it's actually great. Kind of naturally blends them a little bit together. And I've said it before, when you're doing watercolor, the main thing you don't want to do is overwork it. So once this starts to kind of set and look good, I'm just going to have to pull away, even though I'm really not going to want to. Because you don't want to overwork things. You want it to look like it just spilled out of the bottle. You want it to look like it just like hit the page and like, wow, that's really just how it happened naturally. This guy didn't even do anything. It's always the look you're going for with watercolor. Not always. That's kind of how you want it to be, in my opinion. Like already I'm working it too much right now. What I'm doing, I really should just not be doing that. Oh my God, I have to stop. I have to stop. But I'm going to go for one more pass because I can't control myself. I have a self-control problem. So I'm going to do one more pass right now, even though I really should stop. Just stop. Okay. Look at this line, though. I really have to. I can't stop. I feel like I have to leave it. I have to leave it, but I don't want to. Ugh. So difficult. But I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to be a good painting example for you guys. I'm going to leave it, even though I desperately want to just keep messing with it. But I'm not going to. I'm going to throw down a little bit of this cadmium yellow over here. Someone like walks in your room while you're watching this and they just hear me like, oh, I really got to hit this blue paint. What are you watching? Oh, this is painting show. All right. Cool. And same deal with the cadmium yellow. I'm going to want to keep doing this, but I have to walk away at a certain point. Once the gradient starts looking good, I have to leave it, even though I'm not going to want to. I feel like that moment just happened. I got to leave it. But I don't want to. I'm just going to try a little bit more. Okay, stop. Oh, just a little bit more, though. Just a little bit more. All right, that's good. Stop coloring. And that's really funny. Someone walks in my room. Are you winning? Yeah, I am actually. I definitely am winning, honestly. I really want to get the sun in here. I'm probably going to go with the red sun. I'll probably go with the orange sun. Red would be too intense, but I'll probably just go with the straight cadmium orange sun. Which means over here, we're going to want to get some night in. Tempted to throw down the indigo. It's really a toss-up between indigo and ultramarine. Maybe we'll go ultramarine. I feel like normally I use indigo as my night color. I'm actually about to run out of it. Man, we're doing perfect on time. It's 8:30. This is perfect. Related to mountains, what about stone faces? Stone faces on mountains always interested me. Yeah. Well, you know, there's like kind of a schizo theory that, like, you know, like a lot of big like rock things used to be like trees because they have like similar patterns, and some people even like see the faces and like stones and stuff and think they used to be like, you know, like some kind of petrified like creature or something. I don't actually subscribe to that, but I think it's a really cool idea to like mess around with just for fun. But I think it. I could do a sunset on the left. Yo, true. Oh, it's really interesting. Do I want to mix? Wow, that's interesting. Do I want to get the pink over in on the left? I kind of do. Man, that's a huge call. We're making a huge call right now, guys. I'm really torn. Do I want to make it sunset style on the left? Maybe pink is too much. Let's do it this way. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try something bold. I'm going to try something a little crazy. I think what we're going to do... Well, let's plan out the rest of the picture right now. Let's plan it out right now because we got a lot of calls going on because I could make it fade from orange to blue, orange sun, but then are we going to put fruit in here? Are we going to give the tree fruit? We don't necessarily have to. We could. This is a big call right now. I feel like we're making a big call. I feel like what I'm going to do, yeah, someone said purple, someone else said purple, 2 people said purple. That's kind of what I was thinking. I'm thinking the kind of like sour cobalt violet magenta color is what we're going to do. And that'll kind of open up the color scheme a lot. It's a little bit of a dangerous call, to be honest with you. But like I said, we're here to do difficult things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop. It's a little bit off screen. I guess you guys can accept that momentarily. It's a little bit off screen. Oh, it's so thick. The paint is so like congested in here. I have to squeeze so hard. Look at that though. Look how good that looks. Also got my dog's freaking hair in it. It's okay. I should make a brush out of my dog's hair. Okay, so we got the magenta down. I'll move it a little bit so you can see. Just move it a little bit. Perfect. And we got the indigo. We got the magenta. I'm gonna get a little ultramarine out just in case. This is gonna be like the safety net. Because if it starts not looking right, the ultramarine will give us like a cool night color that's very safe. Ultramarine is like the lapis lazuli color. That's why it's called ultramarine. If you watch the show a lot, you should know that. Ultra means far, marine means ocean. Lapis lazuli used to come from Afghanistan into Europe, so they called it far over the ocean. That's the deal. Okay, and this is going to be a little delicate too because I have this nice mountain and seat painted in, but you know, like I said before, let's just make it happen. Let's make some cool things happen. The paint is not getting picked up, so we are very lucky that that's not the case. And we're just going to kind of come down here, come over here. Okay, let's just go for it. Let's just go for it. So this is the night color. It's a very, indigo is like the perfect nighttime color. It's dark, it's kind of desaturated. It's like literally the color like of the dome of the night sky. If you were like an ancient person and you saw this, you'd be like, oh fuck yeah, that's what color the dome is. Call that dome color. All right, so we're gonna throw this down. And I'm probably just gonna have it come at that saturation level. It's really funny what I just said. Down to the horizon, and then I'll come back up with the pink. I'll drop the pink in because that is gonna be tough to finagle, but we'll see. And I want the blue coming into the tree. I don't want it to look so isolated like it just did. Perfect. So I'm gonna load up. I should use a different brush. Should have planned this out a little bit better, but I didn't. And I'm just gonna grab, so you can see I'm working kind of quickly because every second the paper is drying and the magenta paint is really, really thick, but it's okay. And let's just see what happens. Damn, that's so much. But I can always dry it up. And I'm just gonna keep picking it up. I just want that fade. I want that, like, frankly, like kind of like sexy fade that you can get sometimes. So it's hard to get because I have to like kind of trust that it's gonna fuzz out the way I want it to, but it's kind of hard to trust in that process, to be completely honest with you. Yeah, it's a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Strokey. Kind of like has those strokes. Is this the color we use the magenta with? Yeah. So I'm just gonna come in. How should I do this? You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna use the ultramarine as a bridge color. This is like kind of stupid a little bit maybe, but let's just see. Maybe I can kind of like bridge it together. Okay, I'm gonna come in. Yeah, I could get away with this. I could fix this down over here. I can get away with what's going on down here. It's just this one streak. So what I'm gonna do, actually I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna come down again with the indigo really wet, and that's just gonna be how it's gonna be. I'm gonna come down, and I'm gonna keep taking paint off the brush and kind of just hope that it settles in, honestly. I kind of just have to hope that it's gonna settle in. Man, I really can't tell if I should accept it or keep messing with it. You can see I'm kind of at like a crossroads here. Because I could accept these bands of color. I guess I'm not going to get the perfect gradient that I want. Maybe it's okay though. It's a lesson in like how nothing's really perfect. But it also might dry a little bit less bandy. I could kind of distract from it if I put a moon over there or something and like fuzz out the moon. I think I'm going to accept it. I think I have to accept it. Looks pretty dope, actually. I'm looking at it on the screen right now. It looks pretty dope. I'm going to get a little bit more. I kind of dried it up a little bit too much down here. And then we'll come back in with the gray and just kind of... should have waited till it dried, but I didn't. And just kind of crisp up the edges here because the pink kind of bled out a little bit. Yeah. All right. All right. We'll take that for sure. You can see the paper's warping a little bit over here. It's actually because this is my last sheet on this block, so I'm not getting the flattening effect of the block. So actually, if you've been watching the show the whole time and you've always wondered like why we use a block, that's actually why. You can see it's bending a little bit over here. It's not a huge deal, but now you can see what happens when you don't have a block behind you, which I don't. Okay, so putting the pink there. Wow, we're doing perfect on time. It's 8:40. Hey, I got a super chat. Thank you, Liam. I appreciate that. Okay, so this really opened up the color scheme a lot, and I think what we're going to do, my intuition is that I'm definitely going to go with the orange sun over here. And then, I don't know, I don't really know about the fruit thing. It's kind of interesting because I feel like if I just plop the fruits on, it's going to really be sitting on top of everything. At the same time, I kind of want to include them, but then it's like an apple tree. I could put oranges in, like it's kind of like an orange tree. I could put some orange strokes in and just kind of hint at like oranges like hidden in and around the tree. I think that's the way to go. Put in like some really small yellowy orange fruits. That's what we're going to do. We'll put some small kind of like yellow orange. Just they won't even really look like fruits. Like maybe you wouldn't be sure if they're fruits or like leaves or whatever. Put in the fat orange sun. And yeah, someone said what I was just thinking. Tyler said what I was just thinking. I was going to say he'll be holding a fruit. It's perfect. That's exactly what I was just thinking. All right, perfect. Let's do it. Okay, I'm going to turn the palette over a little bit. Cool. And you know we got the devil book supporting the palette. Who is the devil and what does he do? That's what's propping up the painting palette right now. And in case you're like, oh, dude, why that good book near your paints? This book has foxing on it, so it has this mold kind of growing on it. So I can't keep it on the bookshelf. So that's what I do with it. I put it over here, and it holds up my palette. So our knowledge of the devil and what he does is literally holding up the tool that we're using to mix paint right now. How dope is that? How cohesive is the aesthetic? Okay, so I'm going to open up this orange paint right here. Perfect. Someone said everything in its season, get a gradient of fruit left to right. Yeah, we probably won't make all the fruit one color. That would be kind of cool, actually. But yeah, that's true, actually. It'll look more dynamic. Dynamic versus static is really the dichotomy that we're thinking of right now. And it will look more dynamic if we don't have all the fruit one static color. So yes, we will do that. I'm just going to grab this orange right now. Normally I'd be really, really paranoid about completely cleaning my brush before throwing down the orange like this, but with a little bit of that, this isn't really cobalt violet, but that's what I call this color in my head. It's just called magenta. They gave it a generic name because it's not the actual pigment called cobalt violet, but that's basically what that hue is. I would call that cobalt violet. Like we have cobalt blue, we have cobalt violet. It comes from that metal, which is called cobalt. I really should use a smaller brush, even though I just loaded that up, because I want the sun to be nice and crisp. So I'm going to grab this right here. Perfect. And we'll just throw down the orange sun. Perfect. Rising sun. Perfect. There we go. Dope. And, I mean, I'll keep talking about stuff. I have more stuff I want to say, but if anyone wants to ask me anything else, now would be the time. As I say, pretty much every episode, we're not landing the plane right now, but we are looking in the distance and seeing the runway in the distance. Man, that looks dope. Yes. I might put the moon. I might not. I really might not put the moon. I might put maybe a few stars in, but the moon is so luminous, I kind of want to have that like subtle dichotomy of like light and darkness, you know? So maybe we won't do that. Although we could put it in like a little crescent, but then it's going to be white. It's going to be really high contrast. Yeah, I think we will actually. I think we will put it in. Because I realized the reason I changed my mind is because I was thinking, well, you know, it's going to be so high contrast. It's going to really, really draw your eye if it's up here. But we don't have to put it up there. We can put it, we'll probably put it right here, really thin this way. And then it'll kind of mirror the shepherd's rod in a nice way. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna get all the orange off this because I don't want any orange when I grab the white and make a pale blue. Someone says it's a very good painting for the end of summer. Nice. Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, it is. I'm stoked about fall. I was talking about it on my Patreon the other day, but like every summer, for whatever reason, I always feel like maybe it's because summer is such a set period of time. Like summer starts and it ends, whereas I feel like the other seasons, in my mind anyway, kind of bleed into each other more. But every summer, I'm always kind of like, wow, I got so much done. Like that's so cool. So I called it the summer of power. And then last summer, when I called it the summer of power, I called the fall of vision, going from summer of power into fall of vision. And I was talking with my wife last night, and I was like, what is this fall going to be for the studio? Last year we had fall of vision. I feel like it's kind of fall of like, I don't know, like I don't want to say information, like almost like storytelling, but that sounds really lame. If we had like a badass word for storytelling, that's kind of what I feel like my fall is going to be about. Fall of like bard ship, something. We'll workshop it and make it sound cool, but I feel like that's kind of what the deal with fall is going to be. I've been going so hard on the comics thing. I had a bunch of dope comics. I have a whole little comics kind of like world that I'm unleashing soon that I've been building up. So I'm just I almost want it to be transparent, so I'm actually going to get the paint off this brush. Oh, it's not wet, so I can put my hand down, and I'm just going to do this. Yes. Oh, perfect. That is exactly how I wanted the moon to look. Oh, so satisfying. So satisfying. Okay. Ooh, Fall of Fables. That's interesting too. Actually. Fables are, well, I was going to say fables are not true, but they have an element of truth to them. That's a good one, actually. I'll think about that. Fall of Fables. People are down. This is the A/B testing. It's getting a lot of A's. Getting a lot of good notes in here. Okay. Last really big call here is if I kind of want to leave this dude white because it looks so dope, but it's kind of a cop-out, right? I can't, it's like one of my painting teachers back in the day, I had this really cool picture and I didn't put the face in, and he was like, I can tell you did that because you were scared of messing it up. That means you have nothing. He was like really harsh about it. He was like, don't ever do that again. So we're not going to leave it white, even though it would be dope. I feel like it's kind of like a scared decision. And if there's even a tiny chance that we're making a decision from a place of fear, in real life, fear is logical, but in art making and stuff, we don't want that. So I'm just going to throw down the lemon yellow halo, give him a nice little bright light situation. And I'll give him some clothes. I'll just paint in the clothes like a discreet color. I don't want them like screaming for attention, but we'll make him look good. That looks tight. Looks really tight. And you can already see he's like more integrated into the picture now. Fall of yams. Nice. Okay. Shirt colors. I'm looking around the picture. Kind of feel like just a bright blue. Maybe just a bright blue. It's an interesting question. Is there any color that would symbolically fit our little dude here in the middle? I mean, honestly, I guess he could be wearing green. Now that I thought of him wearing green, I can't really unsee it. Because he'd kind of match with the tree, but it's also a bright popping color. He'd stand out. Let's go with the green. Green is like, I don't know if the word is fecundness. Green is like, I hate that the word fertility makes people think of like sex and babies, so I like using the word fecund. But green is like, fecundness. Green is like, the color of like things growing and being fertile. You can be intellectually fertile. You don't have to be just fertile about babies and stuff. Spiritual fertility. What a cursed phrase. I'm never going to say that again. Spiritual fecundness. Fecundity. That's a word, right? I don't know if it is or not. But I make up a lot of words on the stream, so whatever. Spiritual fecundity. Okay. Yeah. Oh, perfect. The perfect color. A little man in a green shirt. Perfect. Great. And I was worried certain colors, this is how like intense I was thinking of it. I was worried certain colors would make him look like he was wearing a sweater. I didn't want to go full sweater status. don't want it to look like cold, you know. It's still like a summery fall day. So maybe he's just wearing like a light long sleeve shirt. Yeah, this looks perfect. It's a perfect color. Okay. Just gonna throw this down. Oh, we're talking about him holding a fruit. We might do that. Give him like an orange. Something like that. I have to make it really yellow though, so it wouldn't compete with the sun over here. Nice. That looks perfect. Looks perfect. Pants color, I'm gonna go with like the faded indigo. I'm gonna go with like the faded cobalt blue. Just because I don't want it to draw too much attention. The pants aren't really important, honestly. Maybe they're jeans. I wear jeans a lot, so. Or I used to anyway. And this is kind of a discreet way of getting like a blue-green in. You can't really pump the blue-green too bright because then it's like Tiffany color. It's kind of like teal. It's like turquoise or, you know, like the stone turquoise. So it kind of upsets the color palette. It's really not like a medieval color at all. Or like a classical mineral pigment style color, I should say. But if you darken up the blue-greens, they look really good. It's actually technically kind of what this color is right here. But, you know, someone wouldn't see this and say it's like a blue-green necessarily. So it's like a discreet way of getting it in. We're going to leave his feet white. Oh, I love this like fade going on over here. It's perfect. Oh, and his hair. I'm just going to make his hair brown. But I'm not going to like color it in fully brown. So we'll kind of just pick up a little brown. Just pick up a little bit. And we'll just kind of drop that in there. Perfect. Perfect color. It's perfect. Oh. Nice. Giving him black clothes might be nice. Yeah, that would be a cool call if I was doing... If this was a picture, just since you mentioned that, if this was a picture where I was painting on a board and I was not using transparent colors and I wasn't going watercolor style, like I can imagine this if I had been using thick paint and going for like the medieval painting, what I would call like a Tonka or like a full-on illuminated manuscript look rather than the watercolor look. Yeah, black would be really dope. But I think with all the washiness, I didn't even consider it because it would really change the palette a lot. But if this was like an illuminated manuscript style painting, yeah, that would be really hot. And just in case anyone's wondering why, the difference would be like if the paint is thick and sitting on top of the surface, then everything has a uniformly chalky texture because the paints, when they're not transparent, are chalky. And then you get the chalky black, and the chalky black is nice because it's the darkest color, but it's not actually that dark, if that makes sense. You can imagine like black chalk. You know, it's like dark, but it's not like pitch black. But when you get the watercolor thing going, like, you can see this is really, really dark over here. And if you imagine like black, like the color of my paintbrush, like even darker, and it would be way deeper because it soaks into the paper and the way the light's hitting the paper. So the texture and like medium that you're using change it a lot. Anyway, little side note. And now I think it's time. It's time to make what may be our final move. Our final move. It's 8:50. Perfect timing. Perfect timing. So, you know, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just because like everything kind of naturally relates to everything else. But I feel like we have kind of come full circle. You know, I was asked in the beginning, you know, what do you do when you're like depressed? And my answer was kind of like, well, the only thing you can really do is control what's going on in your brain, right? And then we have this picture and the psalm that's about, you know, the way of the righteous man, the way of the unrighteous man, and the righteous man chooses this path, the unrighteous man chooses this other path. So kind of fits in perfectly with what we started out talking about. That, you know, all you can really control is the path you choose, what you choose to put in your brain. And that's, I guess, that's the difference really between the righteous and unrighteous man in a way. I mean, what you do matters, of course, but we all know that. And sometimes what you do isn't really coordinated with if you're depressed or not, right? I mean, we've all been like doing good stuff and been like kind of depressed, and the opposite too. Some people that are doing really bad stuff aren't depressed at all, so it's not as much of a correlation there as we would like. Okay, and for the fruit, I'm actually going to go really, really small because I really don't want it. I'm kind of worried, I guess, not in an irrational way. I said you shouldn't make decisions based out of fear, but this would be irrational fear. If I put in these big fruits, then I think the picture is going to become like about them, so I really don't want that to happen. So I might be going a little bit smaller than you're expecting, but I kind of just want to put in exactly like that. That's exactly the size that I was going for. Just kind of like little fruits. Maybe they're still growing, maybe they're not fully grown or whatever. And then we talk, oh, perfect. It's perfect. It's literally perfect. Making them a little bit dynamic in terms of their color. So I'm going to put some darker orange ones over here. I want to make them look a little random, so I'm going to make sure they're not all like evenly spaced. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to throw in some lighter ones. Might even go just a little straight cadmium yellow for some of them. Yeah, maybe they're like oranges. I'm imagining these as like oranges, honestly. Perfect. Some in here, some in the spots where there's openings. It's a little bit of a delicate game because, like I said, you don't want them to be like totally evenly spaced, but we do want it to look like a big tree, like full of fruit. So actually, this is looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good. Sometimes when I'm doing this, I go, so like if you're doing like, for example, like stars in a night sky, it's a really good example. You don't want it to look too controlled. Like if you go in the night sky and you're like ding, 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 and you put them like a checkerboard, then it obviously looks like not random, but you also want to make sure it looks good. So when I'm doing this, just so you know what I'm thinking, I'm going back and forth. Sometimes I'm like not thinking about it at all and doing it randomly, and then other times I am looking at the whole thing and being like, oh, we need some over here, we need some over here, but if you stay in that mindset of like, oh, we need some over here and some over here, then it just becomes evenly spaced and it doesn't look like a natural phenomenon. Yeah, that looks sick. And I'm stoked about how this came out. I'm stoked. Did I say stoked or stoked? I can't remember. But all right, this looks really good, man. Same deal as the sky. I have to stop at a certain point, but this looks great. Man, that looks really good. Really like that. Really like that. Nice. Yeah, we're going to give him an orange for sure. I wasn't sure if that was going to look good, but now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's got to happen. Just want to make sure it's opaque enough, so I'm going to throw in. But I want to make sure it's not too orange, because I don't want it to be competing with that. So I'm going to grab a lot of yellow and put it over here. And I want to make sure I have a good brush. This is a good brush, though. I can't blame it on the brush. Let's just go for it. I'm going to give him a little orange he's holding. Perfect. Perfect. If we want to draw a little attention to it, I can add a little bit of the sun color in there. Oh, man, this looks great. Let's do it. A little bit of the sun color. Perfect. Perfect. A little bit of the yellow, too. Now I'm just pushing my luck. But I do kind of want a little bit of the yellow in there, so I'm going to try and load up my brush and just what's it? Man, very cool, very cool. Honestly, I think this is one of the ones that just kind of wrapped itself up. I actually don't want to do anything else. I really feel like we just landed in like a really, really good spot. Nice. I'm very pleased. Wow. Cool. Cool. Okay. I always feel like I should do like a recap. I say this every single episode, but you just watched me do it. But I really like how this came out. I mean, should we read it again? It's just one little paragraph. Let's just read it one more time. It takes like 2 seconds. And I mean, if we just watch the whole painting show, I mean, I just did it. You just watched it. We might as well burn it into our minds fully. So we were working with, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the troublesome. But his will is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree, planted by streams of waters, that produceth its fruit in its season, and his leaf shall not wither. He's kind of like a leaf with this green. That's perfect, actually. And whatever he does shall prosper. Not so are the ungodly, not so. But they are like the dust the wind drives from the face of the earth. Got some kind of dusty area going on over here. Therefore the ungodly shall not rise in the judgment, nor sinners in the counsel of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Cool. I'm really stoked about how this came out, honestly. I think it looks great. We got the mountainy, the seed. I like the moon, how it came out. I guess, instead of doing a recap, I could kind of just say like what surprised me as we were going, but I guess I didn't really anticipate the balance of both sides, and I guess the tree also really came out like doper than I expected. I was kind of imagining like a pine tree, I guess, but I really like this, and I feel like what we stepped up a little bit in terms of this one is I've kind of been reacting against like, I mean, you've seen the show before, presumably. If you haven't, like, go check it out. But sometimes it's like, I always use the metaphor of weapons, obviously, where sometimes we do the whole picture and every single square inch is like so controlled and everything is like perfectly painted and we're all tense and doing everything perfectly with like the sniper rifle scalpel. But here we got a nice balance of like, Some things are crisp, some things are loose, some things are integrating like the chaotic nature of watercolor, some things aren't. So nice, that was very successful. And damn, we're right on time, 8:58. Perfect. Well, sometimes when it's perfect, it's perfect. Didn't really get any questions, so I mean, if anyone wants to quickly ask me something in the last 2 seconds, you can. Otherwise, I guess we might just wrap it up right now. Is there anything else I should tell you guys, honestly? Let me think. I mean, I don't want there to be dead air at the end, but not really. I'm kind of suspecting, I guess we'll talk about how it's going to go forward. I'm kind of suspecting that we'll hit a lot more of the Psalms because they're kind of the perfect thing for us to hit and talk about, where like, I mean, we'll do like just a 1 minute on like the meta nature of the show, like meta looking at the show, and then I'll press the end button. But I've kind of been trying to figure out what the next step is, because I feel like we get to like these plateaus with the show. So like it's like, oh, we're making art on the show. Now that's going well. Plateau. Okay, now we're going to talk about like symbolism and what things mean. Like now we got that going. Plateau. So I feel like the next plateau after that is kind of going deeper into the symbolism and how they go together and more creatively like hitting the art situation. So I don't know. Somebody's telling me the Psalms are going to be the way to go. But we'll see. We don't need to lock it in. So that's basically it. Did you enjoy? Thank you. I was going to say, did you enjoy? But I should just say thank you for spending your Thursday evening with me. Oh, it's not Thursday. It's Tuesday. Thanks for spending your Tuesday evening with me. Like I always say, I look forward to this all day. I'm really stoked people check it out, get something out of it. Stuff to look forward to from the studio. I got comics dropping. I'm trying to drop the new shirts really soon. I'm just waiting for a package this week. Prints and stuff like that. So I got a lot of dope stuff going on. That's basically it. So yeah, hope you enjoyed hanging out. Let's see. Since September, were you around for the Jewish prophecy hype a few years back? No, I was not. Which psalm is next? Don't know. Maybe the second one. Maybe we'll go in order, but we'll see. I got to pick what's going to make a good show. That's it. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for coming through. Thanks for doing the spiritual work that you do on the giant chessboard of spiritual warfare that we all inhabit. This was a nice respite from it, a nice oasis, but now it's time. We're going back. I'm going to clean my house. I'm going to do productive things. Maybe I'll go to sleep. I woke up at like 5:30 a.m., but thanks for taking part in the battle for souls that we all humbly participate in. And thanks for hanging out with me on the internet. So I will see you in the cyber planes that we all roam. Not a forced metaphor at all. And I'm pressing the end button right now. Thanks for hanging out, guys. And I will see you later.